Number 10. Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Hush. I actually really love this story, but it's also kinda out there, especially when you consider it has its own sort of theme song and a very creepy tone. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse Hush, Bruce Wayne is the one who becomes a version of the Hush character. It would be more accurate though to say that he becomes a version of Hush and Batman if they were kinda like combined together. Here, Thomas Elliot instead becomes a rich billionaire playboy and also corrupt senator, allying himself with Talia al Ghul. He manages to make it so that Bruce was locked away in Arkham Asylum. Despite feeling slightly guilty about doing this to his childhood friend, overall Elliot is pretty okay with the way Bruce is imprisoned and treated there. However, after faking his death, Bruce Wayne manages to escape Arkham and becomes Elliot's worst nightmare. And just for a fun fact, he doesn't go by Hush in this one though, he's the Silenced. Shh. Get it? Still like Hush. Number 9. JLA the Nail. This is an Elseworld story that centers around a literal nail. The nail in question is one that punches Martha and Jonathan Kent's tire, thereby preventing them from intercepting and adopting little baby Kal-El, who would grow up to become Superman. Or at least he would have grown up to become Superman if that's what happened. In this world, instead, there is seemingly no Superman. As such, Lex Luthor is successful in making the JLA a band of outlaws. Instead of them being celebrated heroes, they're kind of considered to be somewhat criminal, despite of course their noble intentions. What I will say is at least a lot of this artwork is pretty good. Most of the limited series ends up being kinda dull, save for a few scenes and plot points. The parts that I found the most interesting were one where Selina gets therapy while sexy posing on a desk, another being a fight involving Joker with anti-grav mitts versus Batman, which takes place after Joker has successfully killed Batgirl and Robin. Batman ends up broken as a result of the Joker's actions here. We later learn that the Superman of this universe is basically a very sensitive Jimmy Olsen who is bonded with the remaining traces of Kal-El's DNA found in this crash-landed spaceship. Jimmy doesn't like it when people laugh at him. He ends up in a fight with the real Kal-El, another interesting part of the 3-issue series, who it turns out was adopted by the Amish, hence why he never became a hero, as he preferred to stay within his community. So we get an Amish Superman, and then we also get Jimmy Olsen Superman, but he's pretty much evil. Also, what is that costume he's wearing? Sorry Jimmy, I didn't mean to laugh at you. Sorry. Alright friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more multiversal tales, let us know that you love it by giving this video a thumbs up. And also let us know in the comments what other multiversal tales you have loved or you have thought are super weird, or that you loved and thought were weird. I mean, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Number 8. Tales from the Dark Multiverse Wonder Woman War of the Gods. I don't even know what to really make of this multiversal story. All I can tell you is buckle in because this Dark Multiverse story is, yeah, dark. To be fair to this one shot though, I don't really even know what to make of the War of the Gods story in the main continuity, which I also found a little confusing, so it makes sense that this is where I would be as well with the Dark Multiverse version. A little confused. In this story, the Amazons of Themyscira end up in a war with the United States. When Diana is pulled into a battle with Hecate as a result of these events, where in the main continuity Hecate was defeated by Wonder Woman's lasso of truth, here she just ends up planting a seed within Diana's mind. Diana defeats her, but only temporarily. Following the death of Hippolyta, her mother, Diana is left weak, fearful, alone, and resentful, and this is when Hecate is able to take over. Unable to free her, all of Wonder Woman's friends die trying to. The only way to contain Hecate Wonder Woman is with magic, and many of her magical colleagues actually die in the attempt to do so. Hecate as such ends up chained, but of course so is Diana, unable to find the hope to escape her own internal prison. Of course, like most dark multiversal tales, we end on a pretty dark and tragic note. But that's okay, Zatanna's never gonna give up!
Coming in at number 7, we have the Captain America from the Age of X event. This Captain America seemed to be mostly the same as the mainstream Marvel Universe's version, but with one clear difference. This guy hated mutants. With the Avengers serving as a team dedicated to wiping out, or at the very least capturing all members of the X-Men and mutant kind, this version of Steve Rogers only began began seeing the error of his ways after killing Mystique and realizing she was protecting a group of innocent mutant children. Horrified at what he'd been a part of, this Captain America would kill his friend Iron Man to stop the mutant slaughter, and was overall just a really weird and twisted take on a hero that usually always fights for the underdog. Coming in at number 6, we have Werewolf Captain America, an incident that actually happened to the real Steve Rogers rather than an alternate dimension counterpart. While investigating the disappearance of astronaut John Jameson alongside a slate of attacks that appeared to have been committed by a werewolf, Captain America was attacked by a mind-controlled Wolverine and knocked unconscious. Cap then found himself injected with a wolf serum by the villain Nightshade and transformed into a much furrier variant of his usual self. Unfortunately for Nightshade, Cap's leadership qualities didn't decrease in wolf form, and he quickly organized a rebellion amongst the other werewolves, overthrowing their master and finally finding a serum that could change them all back into human form. Coming in at number 5, we have the infamous Iron Cap. In the alternate universe of the Bullet Points miniseries, in which various Marvel heroes have had their origin stories all switched around, Steve Rogers is unable to take the super soldier serum, but volunteers for an experimental exoskeleton to join the war effort. Encased in an iron suit that has to be connected to his heart, Steve Rogers becomes both a captain and Iron Man, using his newfound technology-based strength to push back against the forces of Hydra and help the Allied forces win this universe's version of World War II. Coming in at number 4, we have the Captain America from Earth 9997. In this dark alternate universe, the doctor that gave Steve Rogers the super soldier serum was actually a Hydra agent working for the Red Skull undercover, and Steve Rogers was actually chosen because of his blonde hair and blue eyes being an ideal manifestation of the Aryan race. While this Cap had a long career fighting against the forces that wound up creating him, the weirdest twist came after this Steve Rogers died in battle, falling to multiple bullets. This version of Captain America was revived by the being Mar-Vell and turned into a member of the Avenging Host, a league of angels that sought to help the people of Earth cross over to the other side following their deaths. I know Steve Rogers has always been a good man, but becoming a literal angel? Definitely a bit of weirdness going on there, Marvel. Coming in at number 3, we have Captain Colonies. Throughout the Marvel multiverse, each universe has their own member of the Captain Britain Corps, a multiversal group that bands together to take on threats that one universe alone couldn't handle. While this character was mainly just used as a one-off joke appearance, the implication of Captain Colonies is that in this world, the American Revolution never happened, and thus Steve Rogers' transformation into Captain America instead kept him being allied with the British colonies. The flag on his costume may have changed, but hopefully Steve Rogers keeps all of his usual heroics. Coming in at number 2, we have the Ape Captain America from Earth 8101. That's right, you can't have a weird alternate versions list without at least a couple animal entries, and on this alternate Earth, everyone is a primate-based version of their original forms. While Steve Rogers in this reality was merely a very intelligent gorilla, he was actually frozen in ice as an act of betrayal by the vampire Baron Blood, who took his place and misled the Avengers into starting an ape civil war. Luckily, the true gorilla Steve Rogers was eventually freed and led the Ape Vengers once more after defeating Baron Blood once and for all. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the ghostly Captain America of Earth 7116. During the war in Afghanistan, a young soldier named James Newman believes his troop is saved by the sudden appearance of Captain America. However, when he asks his squad mates about the incident, they all seem to believe that it was James that accomplished their rescue. In this universe, Captain America is lying comatose under the surveillance of the US government, but is somehow sending out his spirit to American war zones in need and possessing soldiers in order to keep them safe. This is definitely the weirdest power set that Steve Rogers has ever been depicted having, and it's honestly one of the odder interpretations of Captain America's status as a member of the US military. I mean, weird possessing soldier ghosts? You gotta draw the line somewhere, Marvel.
Number 10, Sue Storm and Black Panther. So Black Panther was actually introduced in a Fantastic Four comic, Fantastic Four number 50 1952 and 1966. He's the first African superhero in American comics. So that actress who was Storm and was all like, Storm was here first. Nah fam. Bow to the king. So when Black Panther first met Sue, the sparks flew. She was bathing in the river, which comics and media always like to pretend you can just do without, horrible parasites or fish touching you. And he sees her as like, noise. And so he gets into the water too, and she's all, Black Panther, hey. And he's like, the invisible woman, Sue Richards. And she's all, cats don't like water. And he's like, but I'm no ordinary cat. And you are no ordinary woman. She's all, thanks. I'm glad someone noticed. Read. And then he asks her, are you married? Because the way you were looking at me, I thought that perhaps. This goes nowhere because it's the 60s and also cheating. But come on now, think about it. Also, this is what I wanted to ask you. Couples that nearly happened, or hookups that nearly happened, because I have tons of these. My mind is a Rolodex of useless hookup knowledge. Let me share this whole new world with you. Please. Number 9, Wally West and Donna Troy from Rebirth. So in the New Teen Titans in the 80s, Donna and Wally were friends. He was carrying a really big torch for Raven, and he also ended up recreating Donna from his memories after she was erased from existence in the 90s. It was weird. But in Rebirth, after the return of Wally, him and Donna, well, they started to feel differently about each other. And well, there was a bit of a love triangle between Wally, Donna, and Roy. Yeah, Roy. Roy wanted some of that Donna action, but when he showed up to confess to her, he was too late. Her and Wally had had a heart-to-heart and were kissing, nay, sucking face. So he sadly goes to stand in the hallway and he's all like, too slow, Harper, too slow. Was that a flash joke? Probably not. This pairing was cute, but I'm not over the erasure of Wally's wife and kids. Kids who were also superheroes, by the way. But heroes aren't allowed to have happy families, so says Dan Didio. I like to think that Donna saw Roy's backwards hat and was like, that's gonna be a no from me. Number 8, Carol Danvers and Tony Stark from 1610, the Ultimate Verse. Let's go with the Ultimate Verse early in this list, get it out of the way, and show you a world where Tony Stark and Carol Danvers did hook up. In main verse, these two were friends, and Tony would end up helping Carol when she turned to alcohol to try to deal with all of the stuff that had happened to her, all that messed up stuff post-Rogue. Later, she would beat him into a coma for having a different perspective than her, and then the comics would break their spine and yours to make you forget that happened, by giving Carol another origin and Minnie, one where Tony was so supportive he called her Care Bear, and was like, it's all good, take as much time off the Avengers as you need, Care Bear. Care Bear stare. Anyway, in the Ultimate Verse, hot and steamy. They were equals too, kinda into it, but the rest of the Ultimate Verse is such a mess. It won't let us have nice things, except for Miles. Number 7, the Samaritan and Winged Victory. Let's get some non-DC or Marvel peeps on these lists. We're gonna look at Astro City, and two of its premier heroes, who happen to have a sweet but also slightly baffling relationship. So the Samaritan is a Superman reconstruction, and he is a man out of time who is completely focused on saving people, so much so that he neglects himself completely, even though he is lonely. And Winged Victory is similarly focused, enjoying her superhero persona much more than her civilian one. The rest of the members of the Honor Guard, the not Justice League, set these two up, and they proceed to have a disastrous date. First, they go out as supers, but everyone is too focused on them, so then they change into their civilian identities and go to a diner, which starts out okay, but then the two start arguing about their different hero philosophies, like how as a feminist hero, Winged Victory saves women first when given the choice, while the Samaritan saves who is closest. She also feels he hides in his hero persona and could do more as himself, while he feels she also hides behind hers. They end up leaving in a huff, but ultimately they both feel they had a good time and gave the other a lot to think about. They share a kiss and are later revealed to be a couple, both having taken some of what the other said to heart. Number 6, Hawkeye and She-Hulk. So Hawkeye is the relationship ninja of Marvel. You turn around, a wild Hawkeye appeared. He used charm. It's super effective.
I can't. I'm an Avenger. They're my partners now.
She-Hulk is also known for her relationships, so it seemed inevitable that these two should end up sharing a kiss or two. They do, but it's usually She-Hulk initiating it as either a distraction or a thanks. It's an offer, but not one that either seems to take too seriously. I would take it seriously. Kiss me, Jen. Although she does then throw him after. Is it worth it? Probably. Better than kissing Hawkeye. I'd kiss Tony, even though he has that goatee. Okay, enough. Moving on. Number 5, Hawkeye and Spider-Woman. Hawkeye is everywhere in the background like a ninja, that pairing you never knew about. But then it's like, oh yeah, Hawkeye. Unless you're a Hawkeye fan, then it's I never forgot Hawkeye. So this started kind of awkwardly. Spider-Woman was crushing on him, but he was married at the time. But when she learns he's not married, it's open season. Now's the time for Jessica Drew. The two strike up flirtation, and it's awkward and kind of cute. Even starts off with a hey. And if Into the Spider-Verse taught us anything, it's that when you use the hey, that's it, you're in. These two would hook up on a stakeout and they would get one of those steamy covers, you know, the one with the arms locked around each other, those types of deals. This would blossom into one of those banter-based couples that seemed to have a solid base. And it was an organic evolution. She saw, she liked, she waited till appropriate, she conquered. But like most things in comics, so few of these relationships last. No, Hawkeye is not Jessica Drew's baby daddy. Though that could have been cute. He could have had a not-so-secret plot twist for not doing my classic romance with Natasha family. What a mouthful. Number 4, Guy Gardner and Ice. So this was a big romance during the JLI run, that being the Justice League International. It started when Guy was injured and reverted back to his pre-brain damage personality, so it was really nice and sweet, and Ice was super into that. However, it didn't last, and he would go back to his more brash, abrasive personality, which while it may have been a hit with fans, was not that much one with Tora, and she tried to stick with him but found herself being drawn to Superman, who had that sweet personality she had first been drawn to in Guy, and it developed into a bit of a love triangle. I wouldn't want to compete with Clark Kent for the ladies. Have you seen his forehead curl? Perfection. Still, this romance is remembered fondly as a kind of mismatched pairing that fans still wish would have worked. Could they have found a way? Maybe. Number 3, Wolverine and Domino. This is a very physical thing. These two are drawn to each other on an animalistic, passionate level, and while at times they give in to these urges, there's lots of talk of him picking up on her scent, which can vary in readers from hot to gross, please no thank you. These two work together on clandestine ops, and Domino gets Logan, both sides, the Wolverine side and the man he once was and sometimes still is. Plus, Domino is willing to do what needs to be done, which is a trait Wolverine always appreciates, because that's pretty much his creed. So these two can talk, but also break things off when they need to. Both these two are more well known for other pairings though, like Cable and Domino and Wolverine and so many others. Number 2, Jubilee and Robin, yet another crossover couple, and we're again dealing with Tim Drake. This is from DC vs. Marvel from 1996, which would see the heroes from these universes fighting, so team-ups, and they would kind of try and match them. So Jubilee would go up against Robin. Well, they kind of fight, but also she's got a huge crush and throws herself at him hard, despite his assertions that he has a girlfriend. She would even cross universes for him and the two would share a kiss. The idea that Jubilee is a sidekick may leave some people pressed, but in 1996, was that really inaccurate? You decide and leave triggered comments down below. These crossovers were interesting and made all the better by the fact that the writers did try to keep everybody in tone. So who won this fight? Well, Robin, but they were flirting so hard it barely constitutes a fight. He roped her up with a battering thing. Also, I love that when she crosses dimensions to see him, he's not like, oh my god, interdimensional travel. It's just like, what are you doing in Gotham? Batman trained him well. And in at number 1, Nightwing and Raven. Teen Titans Go. So for a while, Raven was completely in love with Dick Grayson, or appeared to be, but he was with Corey, aka Starfire, but that didn't stop her from making out with him a whole bunch. And she was encouraged by the fact that when she kissed him, she sensed feelings of love. He did love her, but not like that, although for a while it was hinted that he did. But with her kiss when she's in her white robes and he's in his horrible disco Nightwing suit with the high collar, and it's all, oh Raven, I've waited so long. Then after it's all done is, I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that. And he didn't, there was chicanery. This would all end up resolved, and Starfire and Raven would team up in a mean-spirited joke that saw Raven making out with Dick, only for Starfire to fly into the window and be like, haha, got you, she's not in love with you anymore. Take that. Hilarious. I'm worried about Dick, even more now that he's Rick. Give me Dick back. You can snicker all you want. The more we prove that we can say his name like adults, the sooner he turns back into Dick.
Coming in at number 10, we have the undead Doctor Strange from the Marvel Zombies universe. While this version of Stephen Strange was able to avoid the initial outbreak of the zombie virus that destroyed their version of Earth, he was eventually tragically bitten and converted into a member of the undead army while defending a dimensional doorway that would have allowed the zombie swarm to invade and infest other realities. The newly zombified Doctor Strange now uses this doorway to peer through the alternate worlds of the Marvel multiverse and find ideal worlds for the zombie invasion to begin anew, making this a very weird but also very dangerous interpretation of Doctor Strange. Coming in at number 9, we have the Soldier Supreme, a very odd combination of Doctor Strange and the Punisher. On an alternate Earth where vampires have killed most of the world's heroes and converted much of the normal population, one of the few vigilantes remaining is Frank Castle. Possessed by the spirit and knowledge of Dr. Stephen Strange as a last-ditch effort to save this reality, the Punisher and the Sorcerer Supreme combined into a single vampire-slaying enemy, turning the Punisher's violent tendencies into the last defense against an unstoppable vampire army. Coming in at number 8, we have the Ultimate Universe version of Doctor Strange, aka Stephen Strange Jr. In the Ultimate Marvel Universe, this version of Doctor Strange that we're introduced to is actually the son of a more traditional interpretation of the character. Following in his father's footsteps, Stephen Strange Jr. eventually becomes the Sorcerer Supreme following his dad's disappearance. But the odd part that gets him on this list is unfortunately his over-the-top and needlessly nasty death. During the Ultimatum event, a highly controversial storyline in which Magneto wiped out millions of lives and resulted in dozens of over-the-top and edgy deaths for many Marvel heroes, Doctor Strange had his head popped like a literal balloon by Dormammu possessing his cloak. Most people dislike this event because of how deliberately edgy it tried to be, and with an anticlimactic death like this, it's really not hard to see why. I mean, his cloak? Really? At number 7, we have Ultimate Captain America, a character that probably wasn't intended to be read as weird when first created, but has since turned out to be a bit more of a unique interpretation of the character. Notably more destructive, assertive, and just a bit grumpier than most other interpretations of Steve Rogers, he could be seen as a different interpretation of American patriotism than more classical versions of the character take from. In another wild and tragic twist, this Cap's version of Red Skull is actually his literal son, the result of his last night with his World War II era girlfriend, Gail Richards. Completely unknown about by Steve and born after he was frozen in ice, the baby was taken by the military and grew up in foster care. Growing up with an inferiority complex, this child would eventually scar himself and become the criminal mastermind, the Red Skull. Talk about a messed up family, Steve. Coming in at number 6, it's Steve Rogers. No wait, it's Stephen Strange. No wait again, it's actually Stephen Rogers, Soldier Supreme. In a pocket dimension known as Warp World, where every soul of the Marvel Universe has been merged with that of another, Doctor Strange and Captain America were DNA digivolved into the combined form of the Soldier Supreme. In this unique part of the multiverse, the superhuman experiments done by the Allies during World War II were achieved through magic instead of science, with the weak and scrawny Stephen Rogers being taught the ways of dark magic and learning powerful sorcery. With a best friend known as Bucky Wong, a literal Winter Soldier after he becomes a ghost, this combo of characters is definitely a standout in a multiverse full of standouts. At number 5, we've got the alternate future showstopper of Danielle Cage, the Captain America of the future. The grown-up child of both Jessica Jones and Luke Cage on Earth 15061, Danielle has taken up the mantle of Captain America in a Manhattan where climate change makes flooding incredibly frequent and gangs roam the streets. With her own arch nemesis in the form of the Golden Skull, Danielle Cage is also one of the physically strongest Captain Americas throughout the multiverse, inheriting both the strength-based power sets of her parents and letting her yeet that red and blue shield as hard as it's ever been thrown before. Coming in at number 4, we've got a bit of a change of rank with Colonel America, aka Zombie Cap. In a world where an infected sentry brings a zombie plague from beyond the stars, and also where Steve Rogers has achieved the rank of Colonel and the presidency of the United States, America's hero is bidden along with many of the Avengers when they try to contain the sentry situation. The Colonel is even the one to eventually bite Spider-Man on the shoulder when the younger hero tries to help. This zombified version of Steve Rogers retains all of his powers and more, surviving with half of his brain exposed until he was finally defeated by his enemy the Red Skull during a final battle over who gets to devour the corpse of Galactus. Definitely some very, very weird stuff. At number 3, we've got another character with a Dragon Ball Z style fusion in the form of Clark Kent, the Super Soldier. And no, this didn't suddenly switch over to a DC Comics themed video. In the Amalgam universe, where the Marvel and DC multiverses have been compressed and combined into one unified world by the megaversal beings known as the Brothers, Super Soldier is the result of mixing the backstories of both Captain America and Superman. Clark Kent is a young man from Kansas who winds up receiving his powers of strength, heat vision, and flight not from being a Kryptonian, but by volunteering for the Super Soldier program to help America during the Second World War, a process which is spied on by a very mischievous Jimmy Olsen. He would go on to fight the leader of Hydra, a version of Lex Luthor, and Super Metallo, a combination of Metallo and Red Skull's usual brand of killer robots. Double the trouble, double the fun. Coming in at number 2, we've got a version of Captain America that doesn't even need America. That's right, it's Captain Avalon. Coming from a Marvel universe inspired by classic sword and sorcery fantasy, this version of Cap is merely called Stevan until his son, funnily enough named Stevan Jr., is kidnapped by the Dreadlord, an evil alternate version of Baron Zemo. While he doesn't appear to have any actual magical abilities or equivalents to the Super Soldier formula, Captain Avalon is a brave knight at the peak of human condition, and his red and blue shield still brings the core of this classic character to light, even if America doesn't really exist in this Game of Thrones style world. And finally, coming in at the top spot for our weirdest alternate versions of Captain America, we have a choice that's not even human. That's right, it's Captain Americat. Hailing from Earth 8311, the very same world that's home to the spectacular Spider-Ham, this version of Cap is named Stephen Mouser, leads a group of superpowered animals known as the Scavengers, and in another groan-inducing animal pun, most notably led them into battle against the supervillain Moltron. While his appearances have mostly been related to side stories compared to Spider-Ham's main adventures, Captain Americat is definitely the oddest version of Steve Rogers that we've yet to see in the Marvel multiverse.
Number 10, Catman and the Huntress. So Catman was given an upswing in cred when he was added to Gail Simone's Secret 6 series in 2005. He went from being a joke ripoff of Catwoman, even though he was dressed like Batman, to a character with actual pathos and motivations and backstory, and a penchant for walking the anti-hero route. This eventually would lead him into contact with the Huntress. This is the pre-New 52, post-Crisis Huntress, so Helena Bertinelli. She was Catwoman and Batwoman's daughter for a bit before Crisis on Infinite Earths. So from the start, these two are attracted to each other, expressed quite strongly in Birds of Prey number 104, where the two have to dance together and can do nothing but have anti-hero banter. Ultimately, this was a two ships passing in the night type of deal. They met, they flirted, they made out. They flirt when they see each other, or did pre-rebirth, but it was not meant to be. Still, it was fun, but again, it was pushing Catman into Batman territory. Na 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 Catman. They're low because it was no great love to span the ages, but it happened and the world must know. Number 9, Speedball and Squirrel Girl. Pre the digital era, one of Squirrel Girl's big traits was that she was an assertive flirt. If she liked you, she made no bones about it. She was quite forward with how she came onto Matt Murdock, and her taste varied. Squirrel Girl had a crush on Speedball, and it turned out he did too. It was all super cute. He kissed her, said he liked hazelnuts. Squirrel Girl's lips taste like hazelnuts. Fun fact. It was all just adorable. She built it up a lot, but these two were not meant to be because Speedball became Penance. This is because he was part of the event which launched Civil War, the first one. He was on the team The New Warriors, who were trying to take down Nitro when he detonated and killed 612 people, including 60 kids. This, well, it changed Speedball, and he found he could only access his powers through pain. He made a suit that contained 612 spikes, 60 longer ones to represent the kids, and he wears it, or wore it, while he fought crime. Even though now he can access his powers again without doing this, he still feels guilt and feels that he should feel pain. This was all too edgy and dark for Squirrel Girl, who was horrified in the changes in him. So horrified she went back in time to try to prevent him from becoming Penance. I must now point out that at this point they weren't properly dating. That's intense. Boundaries. I'm scared. He would ultimately become Speedball again without time travel. And these two, well, it wasn't meant to be. Number 8, Elektra and the Punisher. Oh yes, this happened while they were both on Thunderbolts. It actually caused lots of jealousy for Deadpool because he was crushing on Elektra hard. The Punisher and Elektra, it makes sense on paper, sort of. They're both very intense, though this was brief and well, it ended badly. Elektra actually seemed up to trying to make a relationship work and seek compromise, and she knew that Frank wasn't over his dead family trauma, but was willing to meet him halfway. Well, he was already full on ready to kill her. He also belittles her for her affections for people in general and says it's her weakness. Yeah, it ended badly. She would have had a better time with Deadpool, to be honest. Are they a superhero couple? More like an anti-hero couple. Would we have had enough for an anti-hero couple list? Maybe, but that word doesn't trend as hard. They count. Number 7, Black Widow and Iron Man. So Black Widow is known for some of her great loves. Hawkeye, Daredevil, and more recently the Winter Soldier, but for a while she had quite the thing with Tony. Black Widow actually made her first appearance in an Iron Man story in Tales of Suspense number 52 back in 1964. Her and Tony would start off as enemies, but when she defected and ultimately became an Avenger, the two ended up having a bit of a thing, a romance. Finally, a legit couple. It was more of a physical thing, but still there were panels of pillow talk and banter and flirting. This was different from the Ultimate Verse, the 1610 universe, where her and Tony had a sex tape and he ultimately had to take her out after they got married because she was using him. No, this was 616. I supported it. Most people didn't though. Tony was not the most popular character at the time, and for many people it was more a question of who should she go back to, Hawkeye or the Daredevil during that time period. Daredevil was a huge thing. He even moved for her, but then he missed his area too much, so they broke up. Number 6, War Machine and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. Yep, Rhodey and Carol. There were even some people who were rooting for this in the MCU, but we knew that wasn't gonna happen. These two's relationship actually made sense. They both had military backgrounds, were both assertive leaders, they understood the demands of being a hero and could work around it. For a time, it was sweet. It showed a human side to both characters you didn't always get to see. A romance can do that if you use it effectively for maximum character development quite quickly, if you're clever about it. He was really supportive, but then Civil War II. Oh, Civil War II. Why? So Rhodey dies leading up to Civil War II. He's killed off super cheaply as a catalyst for Carol to go full Minority Report. So yeah, he pretty much got fridged, which is an equal opportunity thing no matter what people say. If you're a supporting character, a love interest, who's a character in your own right, and then you just get killed somewhere else. Bridge. The panel is so dramatic too. No. It would have had more of an impact if Civil War II had been better, if he had stayed dead, and if after he came back the two had kept on dating. But none of those things happened. Some people still miss this pairing though. When it worked, it worked. Sometimes you just want something wholesome. Number 5, Carol Danvers and Wonder Man. This was one of the bigger romances for Carol. Poor Wonder Man. Outside of comics, so many people are like, who? He vanished for quite a number of years after his first appearance because of DC. They were kicking up a stink over them having Wonder Woman and Wonder Man being too similar. But when they then introduced Power Girl after Marvel had introduced Power Man, all bets were off. So here's a picture of the two of them making out. She was Ms. Marvel. Fun fact, Wonder Man has the brain patterns used to make Vision, and had a thing for / with Scarlet Witch. Wonder Man and Carol makes sense, but it's a blip for most, and very much part of the let's pretend Carol was never Ms. Marvel campaign going on at Marvel. Side note, I loved her Ms. Marvel costume. Fight me. They have their most prominent thing during the Mighty Avengers. In fact, Ms. Marvel recruits him. This one would fade though, along with Wonder Man for most people. They just keep forgetting about him. But not us. Right guys? Number 4, Wally West 2 and Raven. So this occurred in Rebirth, which presented an interesting conundrum vis-a-vis Wallace West or Wally 2, who had been brought into existence to replace Wally 1, who had been erased because as mentioned, Dan Didio hates him. So Wally West came back in Rebirth, but Wallace was still around, and if he had been erased out of existence for no reason, tables would have been flipped. Some characters will get tables flipped for them and others won't, we all know this. So he was kept around and was on Damian's Titans team as Kid Flash, and him and Raven, their relationship was very cute and sweet. It was a callback to the new Teen Titans, and Wally 1's feelings for Raven. Only this Raven seems more keen to return Wallace's feelings. He's super earnest. He actually says, "Thanks for sweeping me off my feet." And when she does finally kiss him, she's like, "You told me I should take more risks." Aww, kawaii. Number 3, Ant-Man and Jessica Jones. We're talking about Scott Lang here. This occurs during Alias. Now when most people think of Jessica Jones, they think of her and Luke Cage. They got married, they have a daughter, their marriage was a big deal, because you don't see a lot of official interracial couples in the States' media. But early in Alias, which is Jessica Jones' first appearance, she is actually involved with Scott Lang. He really likes her, but it's not the healthiest relationship, as she's still working through a lot of her trauma, not only from the Purple Man, but from the rest of the superhero community who beat her into a coma. So she ended up cheating on him and getting pregnant, and he ended up leaving when he learned that he wasn't the father. These two were just at the wrong time. And also in Alias, her and Cage are friends, and he's the one person she can tell her darkest secret to, that there's a part of her that doesn't hate the Purple Man, even loves him even though she knows it's not real. And he doesn't judge her. That's husband material right there. Number 2, Beast and Dazzler. That's right, Hank McCoy and Dazzler. They had a mini-series team-up comic that was called Beauty and the Beast. So these two were an unlikely pairing that got together after Dazzler had been outed as a mutant, which had tanked her disco career. But Hank found her charming and lovely and vowed to stick by her side as she got back on her feet. These two would have a whirlwind romance, complete with upside-down kiss and dialogue like, "I don't know what I'm doing." One just goes along and does it. And also plenty of action and adventure and kidnapping and all the like. Pew pew. These two would break up because Dazzler realized she was using the romance as an escape from her problems rather than facing them head on. So it wasn't an equal relationship. So real talk, you know lots of why this exists is because they wanted to use this title, Beauty and the Beast. Boom-tsh. We all know it. And in at number 1, Silk and Spider-Man. This was one of those post One More Day and post Spider-Verse pairings. These two were all over each other, hot and heavy, but the reason that happens might squick you out, Their pheromones react together and force them to be very attracted to one another. It's a constant pull they must fight. Is this my high school fanfic? Who's been going through my files? This is, the we can't help ourselves thing. You can look at it a few ways. For me, I prefer when they can't help themselves because of figurative animal magnetism, not literal. These two would break up, and Silk is oftentimes pretty mean to Spidey cause girl power? I don't know, she gets real salty at him. She should be salty at the writers. Our pheromones match, my stank matches your stank. Some love these two though and wish they would get back together and view them as endgame. Who's your endgame for Peter? Honestly, when they were together and it worked before you knew it was pheromones, it was pretty cute.
Coming in at number 10 is Kang the Conqueror. Kang is a little bit of an interesting pick for this list, as he totally can be stopped and has been multiple times. Thanks to the advanced time period he comes from though, Nathaniel Richards has an increased lifespan, making him look 40 when he's actually 7 years old. That's fine, that doesn't make him unstoppable. What makes him unstoppable is a couple of things. For starters, as most people know, Kang has a huge relationship with time. A version of this guy exists at almost all moments of the time stream, and not just one version of him, as there have been Kangs from different universes that have shown up as well. So not only can Nathaniel Richards show up at any point in the time stream in any of his numerous identities that all have their own long history, but his alternate universe versions are almost always set to make an appearance in his place. And then, on top of that, until recently, Nathaniel had the ability to transfer his consciousness to another body when he passed away. Nathaniel, Rama Tut, Iron Lad, Kid Immortus, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus himself, Mr. Griffin, he who remains, whatever you want to call him, Kang the Conqueror is pretty much unstoppable. Number 9, Galactus. The being formerly known as Galen of the planet Ta lived before the modern cosmos in the previous cosmos. Galen gestated with the sentience of the universe for billions of years, transforming into the devourer of worlds, finding sustenance by ingesting entire planets, preferably those with living sentient beings that have much more energy for him to harness. Now when Galactus destroys and consumes a planet, he is sort of bringing balance to the universe, kind of like how life is given and taken away every day on Earth, which makes him an essential part of the universe. He's known for the destruction of the Squirrel Empire and has attempted to devour the Earth so many freaking times, and I guess other planets for that matter too, or whatever. Galactus is also famous for his heralds such as Silver Surfer and the Cosmic Ghost Rider, and so many others, and while they are all powerful beings themselves, usually even before they gain the herald power boost, they don't hold a candle to Galactus himself. His only caveat is that Galactus's power depends on his planet's consumption, so a weakened Galactus has been taken out before, but if he eats like 4 or more planets or something, he's been able to defeat multiple mad celestials all by himself. He's powered by food, and I think pretty much all of us can can understand that. Coming in at number 8, Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity Eternity. So, being the opposite of Eternity, his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel who exist for that reason, and funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. Abraxas is tied to Galactus too, because when Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus is taken off the board in Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas is released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas' powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain. So, how the heck do the heroes come out on top against this guy? Well, in Fantastic Four number 48 to 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful weapon called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying our Earth. Now the heroes, specifically Reed Richards, ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, destroying reality and remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. That's the route we had to go to here. Kinda makes you wonder why Marvel would even write such a powerful villain in the first place, but
And at 7, Phyla Vell. After Janice Vell, then known as Captain Marvel, previously destroyed and recreated the universe, the new version was subtly altered with Phyla Vell's existence being one of the changes. Phyla Vell was the second artificially created offspring of Captain Marvel, who was created by her mother Elysius in the new universe because her first attempt, Janice Vell, had been so successful. She fought her brother, who was insane at the time, and in the process of helping to restore his sanity, she then tried to claim the Captain Marvel title, though her brother refused to give it up. To save Rick Jones's girlfriend, Marlo Chandler, Janice had to travel to the future to see what would be the cause of her future demise. He asked Phyla to stay behind on Earth to keep watch over Marlo, and in doing so, she encountered the being known as Magus, who tried to kidnap Marlo. She and the telepath Moondragon foiled the plot, and Janice returned to Earth shortly after, telling her that he stopped a villainous plan to release Magus hundreds of years in the future, but wouldn't explain how. But like, bro, I just fought him, couldn't you have done that a little sooner? And at 6, AI Avengers. This android-based Captain Marvel was one of the many robotic versions of the Avengers created by Raz Malhotra, which were in turn inspired by Egghead and his AI Avengers. They were dispatched to fight off the Hulk and the forces of Hydra at the Mount, but were ultimately destroyed. But I mean, like, come on. An AI version of Captain Marvel is pretty weird, but honestly, based on what I talk about on Top 10 Gaming, it's par for the course for me. Halfway through into number 5, Janice Vale. After a falling out with Captain America, Rick Jones found himself mentally drawn to a pair of extraterrestrial golden bracelets, the Nega Bands. Donning the bands, Rick slammed his wrists together with all of his might, and his atoms traded places with those of the exiled Kree Captain Marvel. Joined together, Rick and Captain Marvel lived a shared existence. During the epic Kree-Skrull War, Rick and Captain Marvel became pawns of the Kree Supreme Intelligence, who unleashed the untapped psionic potential of Rick's mind, the Destiny Force, to put an end to the war. Sometime later though, as a result of the exposure to deadly nerve gas, Captain Marvel perished from incurable systemic cancer. As Rick slowly began to move on with his life, eventually getting married, Marvel's love, Elysius, felt more alone than ever. Using Titanian science, Elysius sampled some of Marvel's genetic structure to conceive a child, Genis. To protect him from Captain Marvel's enemies, Genis was artificially aged to maturity and taken to an isolated world where he would be safe from harm. Upon discovering of his true lineage though, Genis donned wristlets modeled after the Negabands worn by his father and was determined to carry on his father's heroic tradition, eventually calling himself Captain Marvel. And at 4, William Marvel. William Marvel, also known as Billy Marvel, was the combination of both versions of Captain Marvel from both DC and Marvel in the shared amalgam Earth. This version of the character shares the powers of both Captain Marvel and Shazam from the DC universe, since originally Shazam was named Captain Marvel. This version of the character was also a member of the Judgment League Avengers and first appeared in JLX #1 from 1996. On this Earth, Earth 9602, he's actually a young boy who, when shouts the word Kree, transforms into a super scientifically enhanced adult hero. His fellow members of the Judgment League Avengers are not aware of the secret though. After Angel Hawk, Canary, and Goliath found Super Soldier, Captain Marvel soon joined and formed the Judgment League Avengers. He was then transported by Doctor Strange Fate with other members of the Judgment League to battle Thanoside. When Mariner was accused of blowing up oil freighters, the US government branded him an eco-terrorist, and Captain Marvel and other non-Metamutant members of the JLA captured him and imprisoned him without a trial. So kind of a little wishy-washy on the whole morals thing. Getting close to the end, in number 3, MCU Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers is depicted as a former US Air Force fighter pilot who was given superhuman abilities when a lightspeed engine test went wrong, and she was exposed to the cosmic energy of the Tesseract and subsequently transformed into a human-Kree hybrid known as Veers via blood transfusion. In 1995, on the Kree Empire's capital planet of Hala, Danvers, then known as Vers, suffered from amnesia and recurring nightmares involving an older woman, particularly as a former Air Force test pilot who acquired cosmic energy force powers from the Tesseract after an explosion that wiped her memory. So, you can kind of see where that was going. But I'm including this version of Captain Marvel not because she's weird, but because for some reason everyone seemingly hates this version. So much so that when I mentioned how the MCU Captain Marvel could beat the MCU Hulk since MCU Thanos beat him and she was going to beat MCU Thanos if he didn't have the Power Stone at least, everyone still got mad at me. And some still hate me to this day. You should have seen my DMs after that video went out. And still, sometimes I get messages about how some of these fans hate me, okay? All because of my literal second video on the channel. And that's the reason I included this, so I can finally say my piece. Redemption is finally mine! Penultimately, in at number 2, Marvel. Marvel is the Captain Marvel of the Marvel Ultimate Earth 1610. For millennia, an ancient extraterrestrial race called the Kree have tracked and studied a mysterious planet-eating creature they called Galactus. Sounds like a Skyrim shout. The Supreme Intelligence restricted this knowledge to specially trained high-level Kree, fearing that if the true nature of Galactus became common knowledge, it would drive their race insane. Several years before Galactus was due to arrive in the Sol system, the Kree staged a covert observation mission on Earth, and Plus Commander Marvel underwent massive nanosurgery to appear human, going undercover as physicist Dr. Philip Lawson to investigate the human race. Growing fond of humans, Vel joined S.H.I.E.L.D.'s ACES program to speed up humanity's progress of the stars, helping to develop a zero-point energy source for manned spaceflight. On the day that the ACES-01 test article was going to be launched, the base was attacked by a Kree killform with orders for Vel to aid humanities no further. Refusing, Vel just obliterated the killform, but the effort left him powerless and he was captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. After questioning by General Nick Fury and Captain Carol Danvers, Vel briefed them, the Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and Thor regarding the existence of Galactus and, you know, kind of updated them on the whole situation. Finally, in at number 1, Actor Marvel. The man who would one day be known as the Captain was an ordinary but slightly stupid human from Brooklyn. He spent his life frequenting bars and getting into fights. As a child, his alcoholic mother hung his teddy bear from a noose, so yeah, that would kind of mess you up. However, after gaining his powers and joining the anti-traitor group known as Next Wave, the Captain would want to change his name. While looking into using the name of Captain Marvel, he actually found out about someone totally different from the Captain Marvel of Earth 616 that we know. Instead, he learned about an adult film star who was using that name. Yes, you heard me right. When trying to use the name of Captain Marvel, the Captain came across an adult film actor who was using this name. And honestly, I think that's probably one of the funniest versions of this character that there is. I don't care if it's not Carol Danvers or Marvel, but it's someone going by the name of Captain Marvel making adult movies.
Number 10, Nightwing and Harley Quinn. So this one is low cause, well, you probably heard about this one thanks to a little movie called Batman and Harley Quinn. In this, Harley and Nightwing hook up, there's no other way to put it. This is after she beats him in a fight and ties him to a bed and then turns around and notices that things are standing to attention and decides, well, let me just have my way with him. You know, if the scene had been reversed, we would not be talking about this the same way, which is why I defy the double standard. This was creepy for me, uncomfortable, he couldn't say no. I hear you, oh, he was into it. Again, reverse it. Would you be saying the same thing? If yes, congratulations, you're not a hypocrite. I'm so aggressive today. I blame Harley. I'm channeling that Harley energy.
Hey, wait, is it true you used to be Robin? Huh, ain't that a kick in the pants? Little boy wonder all grown up.
Harley isn't exactly the most stable. But this isn't the only time we've seen these two hook up. This also happened briefly in Grayson, where she actually identified him by his kiss. Grayson was an interesting series, so much cheesecake pretending that that level of overt thirst happened in other comics. Man was molested and attacked by vampires. I've read all of Grayson. I was the target audience, I think, and they got me. It's fine, it happens. Number 9, Superman and Poison Ivy. So this is pure coercion, no romance. No romance, or is this a consensual hookup shenanigans here? This occurred during Hush, and Poison Ivy used her pheromones and, well, pheromone kiss to control him. I'm telling you, Superman is susceptible to these things. Now some say he's not more susceptible than others, why are you harping on it? However, when someone is nearly invulnerable, all weaknesses stand out all the more. So here Ivy controlled Superman at the behest of Hush, and for the overall plot. Now some people just remember this cause, well, it's an iconic look. That's a good reveal when she wraps herself around him and is all like, oh, gasp, I can't believe this is happening. The art in Hush was just really good, regardless of how you feel about everything else. Number 8, Power Girl and Desaad. That's right, you heard it here first, or probably later. This happened in the world's finest comic that was between the Huntress and Power Girl. So this occurred in the New 52 and had to do with Earth 2 shenanigans. So how did this happen? Well, again, this was kind of clandestine. She didn't know she was hooking up with Desaad at first, and there's a great cover with a cell phone, and I'm putting it up, you can see it. So he was posing as Mr. Terrific, who had been exiled to Earth 2, and used that as a chance to make his move and actually succeeded in getting Power Girl to be his girlfriend. So he must have something going on in the personality department. I'm just kidding. She was already drawn to Mr. Terrific. He wrote in that pre-existing goodwill and relationship. And well, this was short-lived, and Power Girl was furious when she found out. He was just trying to find his way back to Apocalypse. Just as if people going and coming from Apocalypse doesn't spell doom for us all. Number 7, Possessed Raven and Starfire. So this occurred during the New Teen Titans run in the 80s, and during this arc, Nightwing and Starfire were getting married. It was huge, we've been building up to it. Well, it didn't happen because Raven crashed their wedding hard, and a Raven who is full on in all hail Trigon, I can't wait to rule the universe mode. But here's the thing, it's what happened when she crashed it that was, well, it was a lot. There was some very suggestive things going on, some BDSM things, like with her forcing Starfire onto all fours and yoinking her hair back. Then she kisses her and is all, dear sweet Coriander, of all those I've taken, so far you have pleased me the most. This while straddling her. How did this get past the code? I have so many questions. Is there a non-R-rated way to read this? Cause if so, I'll accept my new home in the gutter. No judgment. What do you all think? It's a lot of a lot, right? Number 6, Catwoman and Nightwing. So this one is, well, it just happened. I mean, I'm perplexed by this. Does Catwoman fall more into an anti-hero vein? Sure, most of the time, but making out with your main squeeze's son is pretty icky. There were some hints it was to make Batman jealous too. Who are you, Talia? Well, Bruce has a type, I'll give him that. Nightwing was as perplexed as I was, but he went with it, cause that was his characterization at the time. Fun fact, not really actually, but writer Devin Grayson, who would write the arc in which he was raped, would initially blame him for it, only to apologize years later and say she hadn't thought the plot was a big deal. I'm not over it. Anyway, Catwoman and Dick, they made out. Next number. Number 5, Venom and Valkyrie. Well, Agent Venom and Valkyrie. Yes, you heard that right. Don't let your dreams be dreams. When you think about this one's kind of polyamorous too, because the symbiote gets in on it as well. Lots of things to think about. This happened when the two were on the Secret Avengers in the lead up to A vs. X, an event that had a mixed reception. So these two, what can we say? It was odd, but it was a power couple, and it was different, a quasi-couple. A bit of wisecracking alien/host with a being from another realm. For these two, it was awkward, a kind of step off my girlfriend. What, girlfriend? Did I say girlfriend? Oh no, that slipped out. So slightly derpy guy with above it girl, only they're both cool. This obviously didn't last, but it was a fun blip. Number 4, Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde. This was a big one. They even had a comic together, one of those team-up romances, so you know it was serious. This occurred post Guardians of the Galaxy in the MCU, which saw a complete revamping of Star-Lord's character in the comics, rendering him far more in line with the MCU edition. Star-Lord even proposed to her, but Kitty is a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. She already had to break off a serious thing with Colossus ages ago, but well, she's back with him since breaking up with Star-Lord. Also, she was Star-Lord for a bit, taking on his persona. At the start of this, it was a long-distance relationship, but eventually turned into Kitty going to be with him in space. This was one that the writers really enjoyed doing, and you can tell. However, it would have meant a permanent shift for one of the characters, either Kitty in space or Peter on Earth, and well, that wasn't gonna happen long term. So these two didn't make it. Plus, sometimes fans get up in arms when new couples go up against a classic like Kitty and Colossus. Number 3, Rogue and Magneto. That's right, Rogue and the master of magnetism himself. Now their big romance happens outside of the main 616 timeline, but there were hints of it there. It specifically started in Uncanny X-Men number 274 when they're both trapped in the Savage Land. Trapped in the Savage Land for the X-Men is like being trapped in a cave for everybody else. No one can resist. The two have a brief thing, but it's over pretty quickly. In the Savage Land, when powers are defunct, when they are, Rogue can touch people. In the time before she had more control over her powers, this was a huge deal. In main canon, it would be a kinda will they, won't they, oh they kinda did kinda thing. She even had a relationship with his clone Joseph, though at first she thought that he was a de-aged amnesiac Magneto, and went for it. Their grand courtship would be them paired together in Age of Apocalypse, where they were just a couple. And some fans were into it, while others flipped the table asking where's Gambit. Since then, this still happens, and she's definitely slept with him since in main continuity. She's married to Gambit now at the time of this recording, or was. It's a sore spot. I feel like a gossip rag. Next up, pictures of Cyclops taken from a bush outside his house. You'll never guess what secret X-Force mission he just greenlit. Number 2, Hal Jordan and Arisia. This one is infamous now, and in continuity we really try not to talk about this. Okay. Hal Jordan and Arisia. Very early in Hal Jordan's continuity, there was a bit of a no alien chicks thing, so he wasn't paired too much with the rest of the Corps. Not to mention the Corps took a while to coalesce. It used to just be Hal chilling in space, being sent from place to place by the Guardians. Once there was a Corps, one of the members was Arisia, a character who was clearly on the younger side who had a crush on Hal, and at first it was well handled. Hal knew about it but would always let her down easy and let her know that she was more like a sister to him, even frequently calling her little sister. Until eventually he had to put her down hard when she showed up in Green Lantern 204 in a new revealing costume to entice him. He finally told her, look, no, you're half my age, you have to stop flirting with me. Well, one day, the same writer who brought us Colossus and barely legal Kitty Pryde decided that Hal and Arisia were going to be trapped in a cave. And suddenly, Arisia is older. She used her power ring to will her body to be older. In the comic it will claim that this also went for her mind, but I say to that, sure Jan. She was 14 by the way, so yeah. And well, all of a sudden, all of his rationale went out the window. Woman body, cave, making out. They would fully get together after this, and there's one issue where Guy Gardner spikes their drinks so that they can get together. This whole plot. Later, a new writer, Peter David, well, a couple of writers later, would just have her break it off with him. And so it was never mentioned again, except by people like me. I refuse to let this hot mess go. It must live on and the world must know. And what could beat that? Number 1, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. That's right, twin siblings, twincest, from the 1610 Ultimate Verse. And yes, they knew they were siblings. And yes, people in that universe will judge Cap for not getting it. What a stick in the mud. So why did this happen? Well, the Ultimate Verse was edgy and extreme, pushing boundaries, many of which nobody was asking to be pushed. Now, fans did not react well to this, but the writers kept pushing it, adding more backstory when it was at first more subtle, like them sleeping together and Wolverine, who is potentially thought to be their father for a bit, watching them from the bushes. So why was all this happening? Well, mostly it was build up to kill off Wanda so that people in universe would care, and it could be part of motivation for launching Ultimatum, an event so awful and edgy that it is said to have been the death knell for the entire Ultimate Universe. So why Ultimates 3, Ultimatum, the whole thing? No, bad Marvel. Bad.
Number 10, Mockingbird. This wasn't a weird pairing because it was so much really bad or anything, it was just more weird because it was pretty random. Although these two had some fun moments, most fans felt that there just wasn't much staying power between them. Also, Spider-Man is a major jokester, and Mockingbird seemed to actively dislike laughing at Peter's jokes. She's pretty no nonsense. The nice thing is that Peter didn't have to worry about Bobby when it came to her being strong, independent, and being able to take on any baddies who might come her way because of her attachment to Spider-Man. In the end, however, everyone kind of felt the relationship was more of a placeholder, something for now but not for forever, as these two both had much more memorable and well-suited pairings when it came to the world of comics matchmaking. And there's also that weird thing of, you know, they don't really have much in common besides their work, so there's that. Number 9, Mary Jane Watson. I know, how could Mary Jane make the list again, you might wonder. You're like, Amanda, really, Mary Jane? Which Spider-Man is she paired with now that's so weird, you wonder? Well, once again, I am not talking about her relationship with Peter Parker, although if we really wanted to explore some of their alternate relationships from alternate Earths and some specific moments in their relationship, there are a few times that even those two have been weird together. But no, this time around we are talking about Mary Jane Watson and Spider-Woman Jessica Drew. When did this this happen? Where did this happen? In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. The two weren't ever officially together, but Jessica definitely had feelings for MJ as she shared the memories, thoughts, and emotions even of Peter Parker, who she was a clone of. Yeah, in Ultimates, Jessica Drew has a different origin story, and like Ben or Kane are on Earth 616, she herself is also a clone of Peter, just a female clone, who was created by Dr. Kurt Connors and Dr. Otto Octavius for the CIA and FBI. The weird thing was less that Jessica was attracted to MJ, and more that she was attracted to her because of Peter's memories. None of her memories were her own, because that's how cloning works in this reality apparently. And before we move on to our next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already and if you're enjoying it. Because yeah, weird things deserve likes, I think. Number 8. Carly Cooper. Carly ended up basically hating Spider-Man after being in a relationship with him, which was pretty unfortunate considering that she was a fan favorite when it came to her relationship with Peter. Carly was very patient with Peter initially and didn't even seem to mind when Peter would kinda zone out when they were together and not even notice when she left a gathering early, which is pretty awkward. She worked as a forensic specialist for the New York Police Department, so they seemed like a logical match. Both were brainy and involved in the fight for justice. However, when Peter Parker revealed that he was Spider-Man, Carly found herself unable to continue their relationship, and the two broke up. However, Carly would still be haunted by this revelation and secret, which she fought very hard to protect. It eventually caused her to move away from New York for a time after a traumatic event where she found herself exposed to the Goblin formula and transformed, being given the name Monster and recruited into the Goblin King's Goblin Army. Carly was later cured, but this experience would definitely stay with her. Number 7. Eddie Brock and Liz Allen. A romance that never really amounted to anything other than Eddie trying to make a move on Liz, who pretty much just always rejects him. This attempt at a romance was made even weirder too when Venom revealed their jealousy of Liz, although I get it, they want Eddie all to themselves. Why bother with Liz when Eddie has a perfectly good romantic partner in Venom? The whole thing is pretty weird though, Venom feeling the need to compete with Liz for Eddie's attention, when really, who has more of Eddie's time than Venom himself? They basically have a monopoly on it. They spend most of their time bonded to the guy, but the whole exchange here is made even more strange by the fact that Liz doesn't really reciprocate Eddie's romantic interest to begin with. So there isn't that much even for Venom to be jealous of, other than I guess Eddie's wandering eye. Venom's like, Eddie, I see your eyes wandering and just look at me. Just look at your symbiote. Look at yourself in the mirror, basically. Number 6. Rogue. So this isn't main continuity Spider-Man or Rogue, but it's still a romantic moment that happened between the two characters, just on the Earth of 161. The two teamed up together in X-Men Forever 2. Rogue at the time had the guise of Nightcrawler, but still sports her very familiar brown and white hair. When Spider-Man encourages her to follow her heart, she warns him that she just might do that, sugar, and leans in to kiss him. I know what you're thinking, a kiss with Rogue could be deadly, but here Rogue was led to believe that she actually would be able to kiss Spider-Man without hurting him, so no worries there, don't panic. However, the romantic rooftop moment was then interrupted by Jean's telepathic shouts for Rogue's assistance. It's telepathic romance blocks, you know what I mean? Jean's like, help. Rogue's like, it's not a good time.
At number 5, we've got Spider-Man vs. Wolverine. This face-off has such a crazy build-up that it actually needs its own issue called, you guessed it, Spider-Man vs. Wolverine. They fight because Spider-Man finds himself caught up in an ongoing operation that Wolverine had been a part of for a long time before the events of this story. And it's, like I said, it's a long story, but basically this woman named Charlemagne is in such a predicament involving Russian assassins and basically an internal manhunt for her arrest. So she actually asks Wolverine to end it for her, to save her from going to a gulag. Spider-Man notices Logan is about to actually make her wish come true. He swoops in, and this is the last straw for Logan. This fight takes place in a graveyard of all places, leaving the two superheroes in a stalemate, each of them seriously threatening to end each other's life. But luckily the fight is broken up at the exact moment by a chopper with its spotlight on, and as this distraction has both of them gripped, someone creeps up on Spidey, who senses it and delivers a brutal punch. But unfortunately it wasn't Wolverine. Instead it was the woman he'd been trying to save, and the punch kills her. I mean, don't be too hard on yourself, Spidey, it's what she wanted, right? And even Logan acknowledges that she probably planned it that way. Okay, at number 4, it's the battle between Thor and Beta Ray Bill. This battle is pretty epic considering it's the fight that would determine whether or not Beta Ray Bill is worthy of Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. He'd already shown his worth by actually being able to pick it up, but that wasn't enough, as Thor fights back against his new contender. The battle rages into a river of lava, leaving both warriors exhausted, lying on an obsidian raft. But they float steadily towards a lava fall, waterfall made of lava, you know what I mean. Beta Ray Bill shows his worth further by saving an unconscious Thor from the deadly plunge. After all is said and done, the two warriors end in a draw, approaching Odin with the results. And instead of taking away Thor's hammer and handing it over to Bill, Odin offers him a brand new weapon called Stormbreaker. So it turns out okay in the end. But this is a battle for the history books, with two of the most powerful superheroes in the whole Marvel Universe facing off for the glory of respect and worthiness. Alright, here we are at number 3 with Captain America versus Iron Man, or just the Civil War storyline. I'm gonna match those two into one because they're basically the same conflict. But Iron Man and Captain America have had a deep bond for quite some time, but there are some times when they have disagreements that turn into physical altercations. One of these fights takes place in the Armor Wars storyline when Tony Stark learns that his own technology has been stolen to create super soldiers. And when Captain America sees a chance to preserve the armor, Iron Man gets a bit physical since he wants the technology to stay exclusively to him. So Iron Man knocks out Cap with an electrical charge and leaves the room. But this altercation doesn't even compare to the fight they have during the Civil War event, which we all know has Iron Man and Captain America pitted against each other in their own factions. When Captain America goes in for a handshake in Civil War issue 3, he leaves an electron scrambler on Tony's hand, which immobilizes his whole suit, leaving him on the ground while the rest of the team faces off. But Tony isn't done, gets up to land a massive blow on Steve, tearing his mask and nearly severing his jawbone. It's sad to see old friends fight like this, but it definitely makes for a pretty exciting read. At number 2, we've got Batman vs Superman. This turn of events is so impactful on the storyline we're used to that it was turned into a movie. These two had a relationship so tight they were like brothers, who sometimes fought. But most of the time these fights would be due to mind control, like in the Hush storyline when Superman is brainwashed by Poison Ivy and sent to attack Batman. But we all know the fight that really puts these two near the top of our list is the one in Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. This storyline, set in the future, depicts an older, more brutal Batman who is wreaking havoc against crime in Gotham. And when the government notices Batman acting out of sorts, they send Superman after him to put a stop to it. And this fight is epic. What really makes it cool is that you'd expect a human Batman to be totally outmatched by the Kryptonian alien Superman, but the matchup is more even than you'd expect. And it ends with the two in what seems like almost a draw. But that's where I'll leave it for the few of you who don't know what happens still. Needless to say, it's a pretty insane face-off, but I think it's fair to say that the world is better off with these heroes on the same side. Okay, finally at number 1, there's Avengers vs X-Men. This showdown has happened before this new event coming out soon, it just didn't involve the Eternals. And of course the context will most likely be different. But in the original Avengers vs X-Men event, the disagreements start with the two factions having opposing views on how to approach dealing with Phoenix Force. On one hand, the X-Men think the Phoenix Force will bring a rebirth to mutant species, a cause they have always felt very passionate about. But the Avengers are concerned that Phoenix Force will basically wipe out all life on Earth. When 5 of the X-Men are possessed by the Force, the battle then becomes more complicated, with this third team now involved. And what's good about this is that the Phoenix 5 then become a common enemy between the remaining X-Men and the Avengers, who start trying to take them out one by one. Eventually, it's just Cyclops with the Phoenix Force in him, and he basically gets turned into full-blown Dark Phoenix, putting an end to the fighting between the Avengers and the X-Men. Because you don't really have time to fight each other when there's a Dark Phoenix with a laser vision flying around.
Number 10, Morgan Le Fay. Oddly enough, these two in a way seem almost perfectly suited for one another. Of course, this only means that their relationship is made even more weird. Doom and Morgan Le Fay became lovers over time, forming a relationship during a time when Morgan Le Fay was training and teaching Doom in the arts of magic. Doom enjoyed their lessons and I assume also enjoyed spending time with Morgan, but when she asked him for a gift from the future to prove his loyalty loyalty and his love, Doom refused, giving Morgan the excuse that doing so would, disrupt the timeline. Morgan didn't like this very much and set out traveling through time to the future in order to destroy Doom. Initially, she planned to kill Doom when he was young and vulnerable, but was not satisfied with the fact that Doom would kinda then not know the reason behind her wrath. In the end, her confrontation of Doom resulted in a battle with Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers, and while Morgan very much messed up that team, she was ultimately defeated by Doom during the fray. Not the most healthy of relationships, and strange that that's the least weird one. Just keep that in mind. That's number 10, that's the starting point. Number 9, Enchantress. I mean, it makes sense for Doom to be with magical ladies, but it's also pretty weird when you consider that Doom before has gone out of his way in the past to show how little he cares for Enchantress, and how little he feels any attraction to her, despite her being considered as one of the most beautiful beings in the world, the epitome of femininity. But you know Doom, he likes what he likes, and even then he probably won't treat who he likes great, and is likely just using them for some other gains. Still, Doom and Enchantress ended up getting married on the alternate Earth 9811, where everyone remained stranded on Battleworld, and even had a son together there. However, not even them having a son together or being wed could save Enchantress, as Doom still murdered her and evaded his son's attempt to kill him using magic he had learned from his dead wife. Wow, that is all kinds of messed up. And before we move on to this next point, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying it, and if you just want even more weird romance in your life. Who doesn't want more weird romance in their life, am I right? Number 8, Sue Storm. This one isn't that weird once we delve into what really prompts Doom to seek a relationship with women, but it is weird because of basically all of those reasons. Meaning, it might not seem weird to Victor that he has a certain attraction to Sue, but it's definitely weird in general. Some have speculated that Doom simply wants to offer Sue Storm more, like Reed's other rival for Sue's affections, Namor the Submariner. But it's more likely that Doom only wants Sue because of the power that she represents, and because he knows how much it would destroy Reed Richards. Still, overall, Doom has a pretty weird relationship and complex feelings, it seems, at times for both the Invisible Woman and the rest of the Fantastic Four family besides. Let's also just talk about how awkward it was when God Emperor Doom made Susan his wife when he created a new world out of the tattered pieces of the multiverse following the incursions, cause there's always that to go back to. And he also made her 2 kids his kids, even though they definitely still looked just like her kids with Reed. What's happening there? Number 7, Elizabeth Tyne. Elizabeth Tyne was initially introduced by the name Janine Godby, which was an alias that she assumed to escape her past. The weird thing about this relationship wasn't so much how it unfolded, though being in a relationship with any clone of a superhero is always going to be weird, but more in how it started, and in Elizabeth's resemblance to another major love interest from Spider-Man comics, Mary Jane Watson. I specifically just want to focus on the weird interactions in the beginning of this relationship though, although it is weird that, Ben Reilly's a clone and then Janine/Elizabeth just happens to resemble Mary Jane. That's pretty weird. Ben Reilly approached Janine initially, and upon their first meeting was taken with her, asking her out in the most bizarre and kind of strangely movie-esque way. He's like, look, I know this is going to sound like a line, but well, I'm new in town. I know that's lame, but I swear it's true. It's just lame that you're using it as a line, Ben. So I'm new in town, and well, I was wondering if maybe we could have, I don't know, dinner tonight? And initially Janine just turns him down, and I think we can see why from that thing that he just said, which is a lot. I feel like Ben also got Peter's awkward charm as well in the cloning process. However, because it is charm, even though it is awkward, Janine immediately changes her mind because, yeah, awkward charm. Ben never makes it to their date, however, because hero stuff, but does run into Janine and apologizes and asks if they can try again. Now, she initially says no once more, and I actually love this one series of panels so much. I wish that they had just left it there because it's really funny, but she actually adds right after that he can take her to lunch right now. How spontaneous and romantic and kind of presumptuous, but okay. I also like that he's just alright, great, I wasn't doing anything. It's that were me, I'd probably be well, maybe not now, but maybe in a bit. Number 6, Storm, again! I know, you're like, wait, didn't we just talk about this? But no, this is different. This one happened in an alternate reality in the Marvel book X-Men/Doctor Doom and the Chaos Engine trilogy, or sometimes referred to as the Cosmic Cube trilogy, on the alternate Earth of 892. Doctor Doom here makes Storm his wife and his co-ruler. She becomes the Empress, whether or not she wants that. They have 2 children together, and we also learn of how intensely creepily protective Doom is of his bride when a guard accidentally witnesses Storm changing, and as punishment, Doom has his eyes gouged out. The strangest thing about this one for me is the first book in the Chaos Engine series came out in 2000, whereas Storm was encased in chrome during her weird kidnapping date thing with Doom in 1981 in issue 145 of X-Men, implying to me that Stephen A. Roman, who wrote the Chaos Engine trilogy, may have actually been inspired by that strange dinner date to have Doom forcefully marry Storm in this book.
At number 5, we've got Miles Morales versus Miles Morales versus Miles Morales versus Miles Morales? That's right, it's a 4-way battle this time, as just like the original Spider-Man, Miles Morales wound up getting his own clone saga. When a villain known as the Assessor experimented on Miles' spider-modified DNA, he was able to create 3 rapidly aging clones, each with their own quirks and variations on Miles' base powers. Going by the names of Shift, Salim, and Mind Spinner, these 3 clones weren't inherently evil, but were dead set on finding a cure to their rapid clone degeneration, a miscommunication that wound up bringing them into conflict with the real Miles Morales. Coming in at number 4, we have Superman versus his 6th-dimensional future self, which just might be the most comic book thing I have ever said out loud. When the entire DC multiverse was at stake due to Lex Luthor and his followers attempting to break the Source Wall and free the Dark Goddess Perpetua, Superman and the Justice League were forced to open a doorway to the mythical 6th dimension, where only the creators of the multiverse could usually exist. After passing through the doorway, Superman seemed to return as an older, wiser, and more enlightened version of himself, a hypothetical perfect Superman. However, this all turned out to be a ruse by Perpetua's son, the World Forger, leading to the real Superman and his futuristic doppelganger to battle it out at the very edge of the universe. Man, what a bummer that this guy's awesome beard turned out to not be real after all. At number 3, we've got the original Clone Saga, the story of Peter Parker versus Ben Reilly. For years, the biggest question in all of Spidey comics was, who is the real Peter Parker? The hero we've been following for years, or this new character originally introduced as Ben Reilly? Also going under the name of the Scarlet Spider, these 2 characters would go back and forth from friends to enemies and everything in between, with Ben even taking the main Spider-Man label for a while as they struggled with questions of identity and who was behind their complicated lives. That's some clone drama at its very finest. Coming in at number 2, we have Mr. Fantastic versus the Maker. Now, most fights on this list have been between 2 variants of a character that have only briefly encountered one another, or eventually were able to reconcile their differences. But in the case of the Maker, this is a version of Reed Richards that is just as smart and cunning as his regular heroic self, but using that intellect for his own twisted goals again and again. Not only are these 2 versions of Reed Richards directly opposed to one another, but their greatest battles have involved the fate of each of their respective universes, with the Maker still dead set on finding a way to restore the Ultimate Universe to its former glory. And finally, at number 1, we have Deadpool versus Evil Deadpool, a matchup that definitely has the weirdest origin story compared to anyone else on this list. Following an encounter with a love-struck stalker superfan, Deadpool searches her house to discover that she's actually been collecting discarded body parts that he'd lost over the years in her freezer. Weirded out by this turn of events, Deadpool dumps all of the parts into a dumpster, not realizing once they thaw that all of the body parts will Frankenstein together because of his healing factor, forming a new, even more hideous Evil Deadpool. With this Deadpool wanting to accomplish evil feats that even the real Deadpool wouldn't consider, it's not long before the 2 super violent copies are battling it out.
Number 10, Venom and Clint Barton. Things get pretty weirdly kinky with these two characters in the New Avengers Annual issue number 3 from 2009. Here we see what happens to Clint after he goes after Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. He is being held as a prisoner and is being interrogated. I don't know if we'd call this so much a romance as a weird, sexy monster moment, but it's definitely notable enough to receive a mention. Here Venom is bonded with Matt Gargan, Hawkeye is naked, and Venom is seen licking him from behind and very loosely and suggestively choking him, while Norman asks him where the other true Avengers are hiding out. It's all very sensual in a way that is odd and to me definitely implies Venom or Mac or some combination basically consider Hawkeye to be a hottie. That's how it's made to look anyways. I can't blame them though, I feel like Clint Barton is definitely a hottie, so yeah. Number 9. Flash Thompson and Valkyrie. This was a relationship that happened during the Secret Avengers when Flash Thompson as Agent Venom was on the team. I know I said I'd be focusing on Eddie Brock and Venom relationships, but this one also technically involves Venom through Flash and is too weird for me to just not include. Also, Flash was Agent Venom for quite a while in the comics, so I feel like we can just definitely count him in. This relationship was more strange because it was just so out of the blue. I don't have anything against it, but even Valkyrie Brunhilde acknowledged the awkwardness and decided to take matters into her own hands by basically jumping Flash Thompson's bones. It was a strange, secret relationship, but I guess what do you expect on the Secret Avengers? Seems oddly fitting, if not a bit abrupt. Alright friends, before we move on to that next point, it's that part of the video where I do the YouTube thing and I say, hey, click this like cause it helps us. But seriously, click this like cause it helps us. Number 8. Venom and Mary Jane. Another strange romance for sure. Venom basically left MJ traumatized when the two first met to the point that she was terrified of them and has had various disturbing experiences with them throughout her history. And yet, this is comics, and histories are long, so pretty much anyone can end up with anyone. Also, this is MJ, and I feel like everyone just wants to ship her with everyone because, I mean, MJ's a hottie, so yeah. These two haven't gotten romantic in the traditional sense, but there have been a few moments where Venom has seemingly pined for Mary Jane, resenting the fact that Eddie always seems to get the girl, despite the fact that he is usually the one messing up those relationships. Which is very strange, especially considering how much Venom seems to pine for Eddie, but anyways. Once again, Venom is definitely a jealous creature by nature, which we've seen time and time again in the comics. We have also seen the symbiote bond with Mary Jane, much to her own chagrin, and despite the likely conflicted feelings of MJ fans at this happening. But yeah, it's a weird and problematic thing, and it's there. So let's just acknowledge it. Storm. How bad is it that Storm isn't even one of the weirdest entries on this list? And her relationship, or date at least, with Doom was pretty weird. Date, kidnapping, it's kind of both. It all went down after Storm was kidnapped by Doom and held prisoner but treated as a guest. He wined and dined Storm, and she was even beginning to think she might be attracted to him. But then he made a terrible move and he messed it all up by encasing her in chrome. Don't do that on a date, that's a bad move. This set off Storm's intense claustrophobia, which she had ever since she was little and found herself trapped under wreckage. Storm reacts by creating a massive storm, one that's implied has the potential or already has overtaken the entire planet, putting her on a level of power that is compared to the Phoenix. Doom might think he's a brilliant charmer who can do as he pleases, but he should probably think twice before he messes with Storm.
If he didn't make the mistake of eating him, he probably could have done it. Or the Hulk should have healed after the whole Wolverine C-section thing, so the fight should have maybe continued. I mean, for the story to end this way, it was a little disappointing. Kicking off the list at number 10, Spider-Man, Jester, and Jack-O-Lantern. The MCU's Captain America's Civil War is much more tame than the comic book. I mean, for starters, in the comic, Peter sides with Tony until he realizes that Tony is spying on him, so he switches over to Cap's side. That didn't happen in the movie at all. So in the comic, this causes Stark to send out Jester and Jack-O-Lantern to go and fight Spider-Man. So Peter ended up getting his butt kicked to these guys, and it's all thanks to Stark. There's no chance also that Peter...
At number 10, Anthony the Vampire. Making his first appearance in Ultimate Avengers issue 14, Anthony was the greatest vampire hunter who ever walked this earth. He trained Daredevil, Blade, and Edward Cullen. Okay, the last one I lied about, but still, you get it. When he meets up with Blade later on, he has a new look. He was eventually bitten by a vampire, so he became their leader as well. The coolest part about Anthony is that he uses a Mark I Iron Man suit to get around during the day, so the sun doesn't, evaporate him or whatever. He captured and turned Smart Hulk into a bloodsucker, but his armor was stolen and used by Stick to fight back. Another Tony, another suit. Imagine you're in trouble and this guy rolls up on you. What a surprise that would be. Issue 16 of Ultimate Avengers opens with a great Twilight parody, but this is also the last time we see this Iron Man take flight. And that's because Hulk punched his head off, and usually when he does that, you don't come back, vampire or not. Number 9, Iron Lantern. From the Amalgam comic universe, Iron Lantern is of course a millionaire who is in charge of Stark Aircraft. While he's working on a flight simulator, it straight up took off and flew him somewhere else. Best simulator ever, if I do say so myself. Then he crash landed on the ground, injuring Stark, and he realized he was brought to a crashed alien spaceship. That spaceship belonged to none other than Roman Sur, who died before getting a chance to talk to Hal Stark. Not being in the best condition, obviously, after the rocky landing, Hal started working with his newfound tech on a new suit, hopefully to save his life. The Green Lantern upgrade of his suit saved his life for sure, but it also gave him the power to create anything out of green energy. He used a battery that reminded him of a lantern to do so. And then he went on to fight the aliens that had shot down Roman Sur and continued fighting enemies such as Madame Sapphire and Mandarin Esto, who, yes, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be great. It really helps us out here quite a bit. You're the best. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get right back into this list of weird Iron Mans. Number 8, Lord Iron. Coming from Marvel 1602, Lord Iron was amongst the other heroes who rose to fame, but a little bit back in time. See, Captain America was literally shot back in time, so the Age of Heroes has to begin there. And in turn, we get some fun versions of our Avengers. Anthony Stark was taken and held captive in the Holy Land during the English and Spanish War, a little different than the cave that he ended up with in our time. He was forced to make weapons still for them for weeks, mirroring Tony's origin in a fun, older way. David Banner was torturing him this time around though, so Anthony makes his own suit powered by lightning bottles. Okay. Now it doesn't matter which timeline Tony ends up in, he's destined to be Iron Man one way or another.
Coming in at number 7, we have the powerless Dr. Stephen Strange. In issue number 40 of the first volume of Marvel's original What If comics, we got to see an alternate reality where Baron Mordo wound up becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. And while most of the story would focus on Mordo's misadventures in the role, Dr. Strange's role in it is definitely unique to say the least. When Stephen Strange showed up on the Ancient One's doorstep, wondering if there was any possibility the mystic arts could heal his hands, the Ancient One simply taught him some anxiety-decreasing meditation, and then sent him on his way, making Strange believe that it was all some sort of yoga retreat. This version of Strange would go on to merely become a peaceful professor at a medical school, which, compared to the Sorcerer Supreme's usual lifestyle, is definitely a little bit, well, strange. Coming in at number 6, we have Strange Supreme from the first season of the Disney Plus show, What If? In an alternate timeline where instead of losing his hands in a car accident, Stephen Strange instead has to endure the loss of the love of his life, Dr. Christine Palmer. Desperate to bring her back, Strange trains in the mystic arts, but finds himself drawn to much darker powers as he realizes that Christine's death is a fixed point in this timeline, and it would take an incredible amount of magical power to undo it. Turning to the dark side and becoming Strange Supreme, Strange absorbs centuries worth of magical beings before finally absorbing even his own better self. Tragically, even when he does have enough power to save Christine, she is disgusted at the monster he's become to save her, leaving him alone as the entire universe collapses around him. Coming in at number 5, we have the elderly Doctor Strange from Earth 982. An alternate universe that mainly focused on potential children of Marvel heroes and the next generation of crime fighters, Earth 982, or MC2 as it's more commonly known, is also home to one of the most unique versions of Doctor Strange, because instead of his traditional salt and pepper look, this Stephen Strange has gone full Gandalf the White. Having long since retired from the position of Sorcerer Supreme, an elderly Strange is called back into action as a master of the mystic arts when the new wielder of the role, Doc Magus, begins to tamper with darker powers. And while Strange would need help from the younger generation of heroes, this grizzled but still magical sorcerer is definitely one of the coolest looking versions of the character. Coming in at number 4, we have Doctor Strange of the year 1602 from the Marvel series of the same name. In this offshoot of the multiverse where many of Marvel's classic heroes were now born during the era of the 17th century, Dr. Stephen Strange was an advisor to the first Queen Elizabeth, and the right-hand man to the monarchy when it came to all matters relating to magic. This old-timey take on the character would be weird enough on its own, but gets extra bizarre when you consider that this version of Strange was eventually executed by the monarchy for treason, but continued to give guidance to this Earth's heroes as a ghost from the afterlife. Talk about not retiring when your time is up, am I right? Coming in at number 3, we're back in the world of animal puns with Croctor Strange. That's right, Loki isn't the only magical hero with an alligator alter ego. Hailing from the same reality as the meme-worthy Spectacular Spider-Man, Croctor Strange is an anthropomorphic crocodile who learned his magic from a being known as the Rancid One and often clashes with the pig-themed Dormammu. And if that's not punny enough for you, this version of Strange is also a member of the Unhumanati instead of the Illuminati, which also features a mouse-themed version of Iron Man. Ooh, and I thought they said Disney taking over wouldn't have any weird side effects. Coming in at number 2, we have a wild combination with the DC Universe with Doctor Strange Fate. During the Marvel vs. DC miniseries of comics, an alternate reality known as Amalgam Comics was born, featuring combinations of iconic DC and Marvel heroes put into one body. One of the most notable of all of these crazy combinations was the being known as Doctor Strange Fate, a three-way mix-up between Dr. Stephen Strange, Dr. Charles Xavier, and the DC hero Dr. Fate. Man, this guy's got more PhDs than a diploma factory. With all of these magical, telepathic, and reality-warping powers combined, Dr. Strange Fate was incredibly powerful, but one of the weirdest aspects of the character was the fact that he knew he was just a temporary creation of a crossover event, and thus spent much of his time attempting to find a way to keep his reality ongoing. How very meta of you, Doctor Strange Fate. And finally, coming in at our top spot is the only Doctor Strange variant with feathers. We have Ductor Strange. Hailing from the same weird world as Howard the Duck, aka Earth 791,021, you might be wondering why a duck-themed version of Doctor Strange is labeled as weirder than a crocodile-themed one. And that is because this Ductor Strange is also a drunk. Studying under the ancient wino, this Strange's version of communicating with spirits is literally drinking spirits, although he does still possess enough magical energy to be able to transport himself and various other duck-themed heroes to different dimensions, including the mainstream Marvel universe. Just maybe lay off the booze a little bit. I'm not sure how well birds can handle their liquor.
Number 10, Sue Storm and Doctor Doom. We're gonna start off with one you may be more familiar with, and that's Doom using his God Emperor powers to create a patchwork world of the colliding multiverse. This world was called Battle World, and in this world he met a version of Sue who fell in love with him and started a family with him. They had 2 children who they named Franklin and Valeria. So basically he was like, F you Reed, I've got your life. How's it feel? And Reed was like, feels bad, man. I'm gonna grow a beard. Now this hasn't been the only time Doom and Sue have been together. On Earth 99315, these two were married, and Doom was a hero, and Sue was Baroness Von Doom. Though some fans speculate this Doom was actually Reed. There was an upswing in people considering these two after Doom was able to be the method by which Sue Storm's miscarriage was retconned into the birth of a healthy little girl, who Doom then named. That's why their daughter is named Valeria, and Doom is her godfather. Fun fact. She even left them to live with him for a while. Number 9, She-Hulk and Juggernaut. This happened during Chuck Austin's run on the Uncanny X-Men, a run that is disliked by many fans, and in it we had one of those reformed Juggernaut sightings. So Jen becomes attracted to him, and the two hooked up, and destroyed a hotel room because they're both big and muscular and it's funny. This also happened when she was his defense lawyer. Ethics, what are those? Other writers would not be down for this and relegate it to an alternate universe Jen, because main verse Jen would never. I don't know if we can say that. I mean, Star Fox? Is Star Fox worse or better than Juggernaut? I don't know. What's the metric? Dan Slott would be the one to be like, it's okay guys, false alarm, nothing to see here. But there would still be a gross line of Wolverine telling Jen after she hit on him that he doesn't want Juggernaut's sloppy seconds. Ew. Also, but you'll take Sabretooth's? Where's the line, Logan? I mean, James. Number 8, Nightwing and Mirage. Nightwing over time has developed a reputation for being a hunk in the DC universe. All the people adore him. Him, Dick, not Rick. So during the New Teen Titans run from the 80s, ladies, the villain Mirage took a liking to him, but knew she didn't have a shot. Not only does Dick not have a savior complex villain fetish like Batman, but he was dating, nay going to marry Starfire at the time. So what did she do? She tricked him into being with her by turning into Starfire. He had no idea, and then when he found out that he'd been assaulted, the rest of the team called him a slut. Teen Titans go! Mirage was there at first to kill Donna Troy, to stop her son in the future. She was supposed to seduce Dick as part of the mission, but she really enjoyed it. She gave him a mullet and that Deathwing costume. Oh, Deathwing, what a time. Number 7. Iron Man and Madame Mask. Now, comics love to give heroes a villain to tempt them if they can, to increase the drama. In Tony Stark's case for a while, that was Madame Mask. It wasn't uncommon in early Iron Man for the ladies Tony loved to either be secret or blatant villains. So Madame Mask, Whitney Frost, yes she has another name but I don't feel like butchering it. These two would come to know both of each other's identities and start a romantic relationship. Madame Mask was moved by the concern Tony showed over her face. She's down for people who don't care about her scars. It is sweet, but this would all break down when she had to choose between him and her father. And she found that she just couldn't. She and Tony still have a complex relationship, but it's not as romantic of one. Number 6. Jason Todd and Talia al Ghul. Let's squick you out. Now at the time this happened, Jason was not a superhero, but he would be if you count Red Hood like that. And he was Robin before, so haha, take that, it counts. So initially, after Jason was resurrected officially after the fake out Hush resurrection that would then turn out to be real, complicated yes, Jason would have a backstory of being taken from the streets by Raish, who was training him to use against Batman, but he was a bit more of a brain-dead husk than who he used to be. Then Talia took pity on him and put him in the Lazarus Pit. She was treating him as a mother figure would. She took him under her wing and trained him, but she would then tell him about Tim Drake, the third Robin, to get him all riled up, and also tell him how Batman had at that time taken out her father, and that she needed him to punish him for her. Then she had sex with him. Yeah, that's pretty squicky. You're like a son to me. Punish your father for me. Nope. I'm out. Number 5. Blink and Annihilus. Blink is an interesting character who I have a huge soft spot for because of the Exiles, but she's here because she had a romance with Annihilus, who is a classic Fantastic Four villain. Blink initially comes from the Age of Apocalypse, and took up with the amnesiac version of Annihilus. This was in the negative zone, but he called it off when he felt himself beginning to revert back to his original personality, as he really did care for her and didn't want to hurt her. This would be a relationship that would stay with Blink, and when she had the opportunity to attempt to save him, she would take it. However, these days, this is more of a forgotten romance. And for most of us, more of a someone was with Annihilus? What? When? Why? Number 4. Ravager and Superboy. This one is a pure fake out. Now, Ravager was a supervillain when she first debuted, unstable, working with her father Deathstroke, but over time she joined the Titans. Deathstroke's kids in the Titans, it's a thing. Well, except for his first kid, you know, getting enhanced by the Hive and dying, which started off Deathstroke's whole I gotta kill the Titans thing. Now, Ravager is more frequently portrayed as a member of the Titans, or coming around to them very quickly. Now, this pairing, her and Superboy, is teased on the very cover of the issue. And just look at Superboy's face, it looks like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to him. But haha, this Ravager was a fake. This wasn't the real Ravager, which I'm fine with. Ravager and Superboy, well, Connor, Superboy, there is more than one now. It's all more confusing than it needed to be thanks to them hyper-aging John Kent, Clark and Lois' son. Take that, Lady of Kleenex mentality. Still, this was a thing. They kissed. It counts. Ha! Number 3. Storm and Dracula. Dracula was super into Storm, wanted her to be his queen vampire. Vampire queen. Why do people in comics always turn this offer down? I'd be all, pick me, I volunteer. Which is why I never get picked. Too keen. You gotta act like you don't want it. Like a cat. Uncanny X-Men number 159. He went full Dracula on her. Seduction. He does turn her into a vampire for a bit, and we get this great annual cover of her living her best vampire life. But well, this didn't last. She managed to shake the vampirism off, and I for one was sad. But we have the whole alternate timeline and what if where she stayed a vampire. This was, I'm biased. I love being an evil, powerful queen, and that is Storm to a T when she gets like this. I just love Storm. I'll take any Storm I can get, even 80s punk rock Mohawk Storm, aka the coolest Storm. Dracula used to be cool, now he's kinda whiny and begs for dates. But he married Deadpool's ex-wife, so maybe he's happy now. I don't know, probably not. Eternity is a long time. Number 2, Thor and the Enchantress. This gets to be high up because this could have been a great love. In an AU story, these two were married and had a son. Happily married, no Sue and Reed shenanigans here. Enchantress at this point wishes she was the woman Thor loved. Amora, not enough people say her name. Amora is her name, not the woman that Thor loves. That changes. Right now it's the She-Hulk. Now this developed over time. She was initially sent to take out Jane and worked with Loki to seduce Donald Blake, Thor's human form. But she came to care for him, but well, that's not the best first impression, is it? And Thor has a whole slew of lovely ladies throwing themselves at him, so she has a lot of competition, and Thor's not really one to dabble too much in dealing with the villains. He's not Batman, that's for sure. These two, there's something there. I just want more of a spotlight on Amora.
I wanted thy not your death. Please. Please come back to me.
And number 1, Dr. Doom and Storm. Oh yes, Dr. Doom is at it again. He's trying to find that Baroness Von Doom. Will no one help him warm his drafty castle and listen to him lament about the death of his mom? Someone stay with Doom. Uncanny X-Men number 145. This issue sees the two of them having a candlelit dinner together, and even though it's part of a Doom plot, he finds himself drawn to her, particularly her confidence and lack of fear around him. The way she acts as though they're just equals, and he's super into it. And she seems to like him. She's like, Doom is a fascinating man. And he's like, she's drawn to me like a lioness to a lion, like a queen to a king. Wow, calm it down. Down, boy. He ultimately goes through with his plan with Arcade, but not before saying he finds her enchanting, but then ruining it by adding child to that. Just why, Doom? Go back to like a lioness to a lion.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Captain America of the Revolutionary War, Steven Rogers. Now, this version of the character is a bit arguable of whether they're canon or not, as they were initially introduced as an ancestor of the regular Marvel Universe's Steve Rogers, but since then have been treated as an alternate universe story. Fighting on the side of the Americans during the American Revolution, this Captain America had no superpowers of his own, but was just an experienced soldier with a shield fighting against an early incarnation of the Hellfire Club. In an oddly tragic twist, however, Steven Rogers wound up dying in one of the last battles of the Revolutionary War when he was randomly struck by a stray cannonball. Not exactly the most heroic end for a Captain America, but hey, they can't all be as epic as Endgame. Coming in at number 9, we have John Walker, specifically the version seen in the Disney Plus show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Following Sam Wilson's rejection of taking on the role of Captain America and wielding the shield following the retirement of Steve Rogers, the American government attempts to turn combat veteran John Walker into the next generation Captain America. Unfortunately, John has a whole host of undiagnosed mental issues and feelings of inadequacy, and following the death of his partner Battlestar, he violently kills a civilian while being videotaped by the whole world. And although John had seemingly calmed down enough to be on the good guys team for the season finale, it looks like his future in the MCU might just be as a Dark Avenger, something very different than what Steve Rogers originally stood for. Coming in at number 8, we have Roberta Mendez, the Captain America of the year 2099. In a possible alternate future for the Marvel Universe, Roberta was the wife of an operative for Alchemax, a giant corporation with way too much control of future civilization. Roberta was forcefully injected with the super soldier serum by her husband without her knowledge, giving her all of the abilities of Captain America, but also fracturing her mind so that she would have no memory of her own exploits as a superhero. Wielding an energy shield and wings instead of the vibranium weapons of her predecessor, this new Captain America initially fought solely for Alchemax's Avengers team, but soon began to utilize her heroics for the good of everyone and not just for a giant corporation.
Number 7, Iron Man Noir. Coming from the Noir series, Iron Man of Earth 90214 had to go all the way to Atlantis to fix his heart problem. What am I talking about? Let's find out. Tony in this reality was an industrialist adventurer. It feels like National Treasure almost. We meet Tony and the crew and they're looking for something called the Jade Mask. This mask that was said to cure any kind of ailment, so he figured, hey, it's worth a shot to fix the old ticker. It didn't work, so some traitors then revealed themselves once the mask was found, so Tony and Rhodey escaped and returned to New York. He goes on yet another treasure hunt with Rhodey, this time to Atlantis, because he heard a rumor that this power source could also do wonders to his heart, maybe, perhaps. Tony gets the trident, and again, he gets betrayed. Zemo and his forces were strong enough to kidnap Pepper, and Tony and Rhodes need a new plan. They travel to Zemo's castle, and it's then that it's revealed that Zemo is actually Tony's father, brainwashed by Strucker. And he was also equipped with Iron Man suits because action and adventure. As far as Noir storylines go, Iron Man isn't my favorite, but the whole Nathan Drake vibe that Tony has is still quite fun. And also, Atlantis. It's kind of weird. Dive in. Number 6, Earth X. Also known as Earth 9997, this version of Iron Man hit the pages back in Earth X issue 0. This time around, the human race is at risk due to the release of Terrigen mists. So Tony decides, you know what, I'm just gonna isolate myself, not being sure how the mist would react, which is a fair point. So in turn, he would wear his armor all the time, then eventually he made an Iron Manor in New York. Super cautious, you know, with today's stuff going on, you can't really blame him. He went even further when he decided it was best to create his own team, the Iron Avengers. guy was super paranoid. So eventually Galactus did come along, so Tony used his Iron Manner and distracted the Celestials beforehand. Now during this, Tony lost his life. Some wreckage impaled him, and for the first time in a while, Tony was able to breathe open air. How, you ask? Well, he died, and his soul immediately went to the realm of the dead, and that's when Captain Marvel's soul recruited him for an army set to take on death. Which is, first of all, nuts, because even after you die in Marvel Comics, you can't just chill out in heaven. You have to like go fight another war immediately. Like, come on. But Death did eventually die, and that's when Tony got another huge upgrade in Paradise. Using the High Evolutionary's devices, Tony was changed into this angelic being, of course, still with wings. And he looked like Iron Man, so that's fun. You can customize your own angel outfit once you get up there. That's good to know. Number 5. Tony Doom. Since What If is currently dropping weekly episodes on Disney+, we have to mention one of the more wild issues. What if Tony Stark had become Dr. Doom? It would probably be pretty bad. Yeah, yes, it is. So here in the storyline that both of them go to the same college instead of Reed Richards being Victor's roommate. So now it's Tony. Two geniuses in one dorm. Sounds like they would make dreams come true, but in reality it was a living nightmare waiting to happen. Doom tricked Tony into switching bodies Freaky Friday style. And on top of that, Tony's memories were also wiped. So Tony, in Doom's body, gets in heat for the experiment, and in turn, he gets sent back to Liberia. Meanwhile, Doom is in line to take over Stark Industries. He still is Tony Stark, so down the road, Doom Industries was now a competitor to Stark Industries. He's brilliant in any way. The pair end up creating their own armors. Of course, Tony builds a red and gold Doom armor, while Doom makes a green and gray Iron Man armor. I'll give you a second to absorb that. There we go. It's a fun little swap with good action, but it's a little bit too confusing of a Freaky Friday type plot. But it's worth a shot. Go give it a try. Number 4. Dead Man Walking. We look now over to Fantastic Four: The End, released in 2007. Most of Tony's story here was the same, but during the Mutant Wars, Tony lost his life. Now he didn't get redirected to a paradise where he would then become an Iron Man themed angel. Instead, he uploaded his subconsciousness into an AI. So now he lives through his armors, just swapping back and forth, walking around, which sounds like a solution, I guess, but living forever? Come on, Tony, I don't think that's a way to go, really. Number 3. Steel Corpse. Tony and his suit have always been so close. It's had its back many times, sometimes even acting for itself and making a judgment call. Like in Iron Man 3, it literally woke Tony up from a nightmare aggressively. We love that future tech. But in the Age of X storyline, the suit literally has his back as Tony and the suit begin to merge. Ugh, I'm itchy just reading this. This started right after a virus began taking its toll on Tony. He was rapidly declining health-wise, so he chose a more fitting name, Steel Corpse, to be kind of funny, but also he looks like a corpse, so he's like, nah, I'm just gonna admit it. He, alongside other much healthier Avengers, were tasked to take down mutants, but when the gang got there, they of course opted to save them instead. Superhero twist of logic, we love it. Only Tony's advanced suit wasn't exactly on board with his new plan, and it started to act out by itself. It still wanted to save the day, although this was not the right way to do it. Captain America had no choice but to end the life of Steel Corpse in order to save the mutants. Number 2. Iron Goblin. Making his first appearance in the Spider Island series, Iron Goblin wasn't made through any reality warping or anything like that. Instead, this happens during the Resistance assault on Spider-Queen, which is sounding crazier than what I just said. Tony Stark ends up getting captured and infected with the spider virus. He's going nuts at this point, so the rest of the heroes try and snap him out of it by using Goblin Formula, which is a solution, I guess. I don't know, read a book, read a comic book, Avengers. Something bad's gonna happen. So he went from being a spider monster to Iron Goblin. Pretty crazy 24 hours for Tony. Tony was still Tony after this point though, despite the evil green look on his face. Like he even said Norman stole his armor before, so he was just evening it out. Haha, he's funny. He's still Tony, nice. But as time went by, every minute that passed, that formula started to in fact change Tony. Like for example, he was flying around on the glider, although he can fly with his suit. It's not looking good. He knew he was going insane, so he sacrificed himself when the Queen's army attacked. Still a hero nonetheless, although he's mean and green and throwing pumpkin bombs. And finally, number 1, Iron Hammer. Coming from Warp World, Iron Hammer, aka Stark Odinson, first came to life in issue 3 of Infinity Wars. So when Gamora had the Infinity Stones, she trapped everybody's soul in the Soul Gem and then folded the universe in half, which resulted in all of our heroes merging together. Pretty fun. So rightfully referred to as Warp World, we soon get to meet Soldier Supreme, Ghost Panther, Weapon Hex, and Iron Hammer. Stark Odinson in this pocket universe is the son, of course, of Howard Odin, chieftain of Asgard. He has the Iron Hammer armor, and of course he has a massive literal hammer of the gods to get the message across. Being a combination of both, he can face powerful villains like Stain Odinson, who is a blend of Loki and Obadiah Stane, and even Madam Hell, one of the coolest looking versions definitely, and also one of the more powerful. A great note to end on. Number 10, Lord Logan. With What If crushing it on Disney Plus currently, we have to take a look at this insane version of Logan from What If Volume 2, Issue 24. What if Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires? I'm still Team Edward, I don't care. The main difference is, of course, that Wolverine has a lust for blood this time around. Other than that, his characteristics don't change too much. His healing factor prevents him from turning, so he takes it upon himself to sink his own teeth into Dracula. Guy's a badass, go over Big D himself. One of the craziest parts here is when Wolverine quickly turns into a werewolf, he tells Dracula he's a quick learner, and now we have a new Dracula, Lord Logan. With Dracula's blood in him now, he loses any sense of humanity, and he's even more aggressive after than Dracula was. He turns over the New Mutants, he turns over the Hellfire Club, the Freedom Force, the Morlocks, everybody is getting bit. Doctor Strange was able to cast a spell to keep the undead out of his sanctum, but Vampire Juggernaut figured out a way and subsequently broke his body in one punch before becoming a snack himself. It's a pretty epic time. It's like a bat versus a wolf for a bit. It's great, go check it out. Number 9, Rancor. Making her first appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy issue 8 back in the early 90s, Rancor was born in the alternate reality of Earth 691 in the 30th century future of the Guardians. She was a 5th generation descendant of Wolverine, and she wasn't very heroic to say the least. She rules over a colony, and apparently every descendant of the Wolverine family line followed the same dark path. On her 16th birthday, Rancor clawed her father's beating heart out of his chest, and then of course she became the next ruler, and her first plan of attack was to enslave the entire human population. Happy birthday. Do you want a car? No, I want all the humans in the world. Thank you, gimme. After the Guardians defeated her and destroyed her planet, she stole one of Wolverine's claws from the Shi'ar Museum and headed out for Earth. Now she alongside her lieutenants were captured and recruited by Dr. Doom, so Rancor helped Doom locate the Inhumans on the moon. She turned against Doom and was eventually rescued by the Guardians, but Doom had this pretty sweet weapon with him the whole time. But before we explain that weapon, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, those likes really do wonders for our channel. You're amazing, thank you so much for your support. Now let's get right back to the list. Number 8, Roboclaw. James Gunn has brought the Guardians to life in such a unique and fun way, but back in those early issues, we meet a pretty terrifying version of Logan. Dr. Doom revealed that he had Wolverine's adamantium skeleton and he had killed Logan at some point in the past, and then Doom transferred his own brain into the adamantium skeleton. So now he's like kind of like a robot version. It was pretty sweet. To see Rancor fight this Terminator version of her own family is pretty mind-bending. It's very entertaining. Rancor is using that same Wolverine claw that she found at the museum as a weapon, enforcing the fact that possessing a weapon means nothing without the ability to use it. She then stabs the Doom skeleton right in the eye, and that does the trick, followed by a little shock therapy.
Number 7, Mephisto. Within the Marvel Universe, Mephisto is, for all intents and purposes, the devil. He isn't actually. Technically, he is a demonic hell lord who rules over his own hell-like dimension and enjoys stealing people's souls by tricking them, and he does that by pretending he is the actual devil, playing on people's fears, so basically, he's the devil. While Mephisto is within his dimension, which he calls hell, he is immortal, omniscient, and impossible to destroy. It's only when he ventures into other realms that he can be defeated, but doing so just kind of returns him back to his own dimension. He has been a major player in the Marvel Universe since his creation and has been either a key or supporting player for many major events. He was the Snake in the old Adam and Eve story. He was directly responsible for the creation of Ghost Rider. He's infamously erased the history of Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage in order to save Aunt May's life. I mean, he even popped up a hotel out of the ground in Las Vegas that manipulated the citizens and let him take their souls. He has been defeated and outmaneuvered multiple times, but he has never permanently been stopped. Number 6, the Phoenix Force. Now it's important to say the Phoenix Force is not a villain, technically. It is a cosmic entity representing all life in the Omniverse. The Phoenix Force will exist as long as there is, was, or will be life. If the Phoenix Force were to be destroyed, if that were even possible, all life would follow after it, as well as the ability for life to have begun in the first place. The Phoenix Force is just a force of nature, but it has been used as a darker force of power in the past. For example, when it inhabited Jean Grey during the Dark Phoenix Saga. It was at this time the entity was a villain, using Jean's insane levels of psychic power, which it then amplified to godlike levels. With this entity inhabiting her body, Jean and the Phoenix destroyed an entire solar system and attacked her fellow X X-Men. Jean had to actually bring her own end just to stop what was happening, and when the Phoenix regained its memories of all the evil it had done, it brought Jean back to life to help make things a little better. And that's not the only time. There was the whole X-Men versus Avengers thing, and there was that time that Thane, Thanos' son, had the Phoenix Force. Almost every time the power of the Phoenix Force comes up, it usually corrupts its bearer and makes like a big stink. Like a huge stink. Big old fart. Number 5. Dormammu. Most fans of Doctor Strange know Dormammu. This being composed of pure magic energy rules the dark dimension and spends most of his time taking over other realities as he finds them. He's essentially immortal and capable of wielding godly power over magic, the dead, souls, and pretty much anything, really. When he is in our reality, he can be thwarted and returned to his own, usually by the Sorcerer Supreme, but within the dark dimension, he reigns supreme and cannot be taken down, like, at all. Using his vast magical abilities and the influence of his power, he is constantly trying to invade our reality, and even when he is banished back or he is stopped, he always comes back eventually, and he has been doing this for millennia. Number 4. The Beyonder. The Beyonder is a singular entity with no duplicate versions of himself in other universes, similar to the Phoenix Force. And also a lot like the Phoenix Force, Beyonder is basically like a baby in that he is a younger member of a race called the Beyonders that are a near omnipotent alien race from a dimension outside of the multiverse. He is himself basically a whole universe. It's really hard to explain, but as he observes Earth in the Marvel Universe and the various races, he gets a little curious, and the Beyonder decides to study and analyze life and humanity, good and evil and conflict, and to that purpose, he pits Earth's mightiest heroes and villains against each other in the Secret Wars. Now, he did this by destroying an entire system of planets and creating Battleworld from the remains and from parts of Earth. So that's one level of power right there. Beyonder's powers surpass that of Eternity and the Living Tribunal, but that has been retconned recently. And he is capable of manipulating reality to his will, being able to pretty much do whatever he wants and then grant himself any power he wants. It was actually a huge treat though last year in the Defenders Beyond story when we learned that the Beyonder and his race were actually still in existence, and he was now an adult existing with the rest of the adult Beyonders outside of the multiverse and being all levels of wildly insanely powerful. There's a lot I skimmed over here to make it less confusing, but you should just go read all the Secret Wars if you want to see how crazy these beings actually are. Number 3. Sidorak. Sidorak, also known as the Destroyer, is an incredibly powerful extra-dimensional being who was worshipped as a god and as a demon by the primitive humans of Earth until he was banished back to the Crimson Cosmos, which is where he comes from. Now, as the Destroyer, Sidorak's main goal is to just cause destruction and raise destructive power. Simple as that. To do this though, from the Crimson Cosmos, and also to win a wager with 8 other godlike deities like himself, he created the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which allows him to select a person to be his avatar, enhancing them to become the indestructible and immortal Juggernaut, which kind of gives us 2 different versions of Unstoppable all wrapped up into one package. You're welcome. Merry Christmas. That's for you. As the Juggernaut is essentially a physically unstoppable force of kinetic energy, unless you're the Hulk, I guess, then you can stop him. I don't know why. Anyways, Sidorak is such a powerful and unstoppable godlike entity that you will even hear magic users invoking his name to cast some of their strongest spells. For example, the Crimson Bands of Sidorak. Number 2. The Chaos King. While he is relatively obscure, he is nothing to scoff at. Amatsu Mikobashi, first appearing in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, was mistaken as the Japanese god of chaos and evil, but in actuality, he was an aspect of the cosmic being Oblivion. Now, Mikobashi ruled and thrived over the Earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness. And as such, his goal now is to put an end to creation and bring about a new age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, which is the Shinto underworld, which is where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, which is Shinma demons, and other monsters. Now, during the events of Ares, god of war, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon of gods, and after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kind of kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the dream dimension, destroys Mephisto, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away. And he releases the souls of the damned. He did all that. He has the power to defeat eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of Zeus, God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor together could not defeat Chaos King. To win, Hercules had to literally punch him into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he destroyed 98.76% of the entire universe. That's a lot. Number 1, Chthon. Chthon is one of the most powerful demons to ever exist. Even though he predates anything like this, of all the devil-like demons out there, including Mephisto, Chthon is the closest thing to the actual devil. He and his Ngari actually ruled the earth before the angel Lucifer attacked them, and that was before Lucifer ever rebelled against heaven and became the actual devil. Chthon himself is responsible for all the witches, werewolves, vampires, and other dark creatures, as well as being the master of the most powerful form of magic, chaos magic, which is the same stuff used by the Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch has altered all of reality with just a fraction of that magic, so yeah, it's a lot. His opposite, Oshter, is one of the 3 beings that make up the Vishanti, and they stand in direct opposition to Chthon specifically, creating the Book of Vishanti in response to Chthon's Darkhold. Other demons and dark sorcerers, including Dormammu and Mephisto, call on Chthon's name to cast some of their strongest spells, and the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, was almost corrupted and permanently taken out by Chthon's mere presence alone. He is extremely hard to bring down, and even if you manage to do so, it's only a matter of time until he comes back.
Number 10. Starting it off with a please they hinted at it, I wish this had been pursued couple. The Riddler and Harley Quinn. So after Harley made her debut into comics from Batman the Animated Series, her and the Joker split pretty quickly. Yes, she still had feelings for him and could at times be lured back, but for the most part she was striking out on her own with a solo series featuring fun team-ups and eventually with the Gotham City Sirens. That series would see her join forces with Poison Ivy and Catwoman. During one arc, they need to enlist the help of a quasi-reformed Riddler, who Harley flirts with hard to get him to help. But the real hinting comes at the end of the arc, wherein after helping them, Harley gives Riddler a peck on the cheek, which he pulls away from, and the comic proceeds to have the most melodramatic narration about it of all time. I see the hurt in her eyes as I pull away. I turn quickly so she won't see the hurt in mine. Whoa, hold on, did I miss a page? That escalated quickly, and frankly, I wish it had escalated more. But the new 52 is around the corner, and with it a new Harley who murdered basements full of children and wore her ex-lover's face. In my heart, I'll always have Quiddler. Number 9, Destiny and Mystique. This is an interesting one because at first it wasn't happening canonically, not overtly or officially. However, it was entirely happening in the subtext as far as fans were concerned, only it was being coded. And then, in 2019, it was flat out confirmed thanks to the History of the Marvel Universe number 2, which canonized it. Which I bring up just to have a ha, I wasn't crazy. They said I was mad, but they were wrong. So Destiny is Irene Adler, and her and Mystique have been in love since the 1900s. The two would form the second evil brotherhood of mutants together and just be constants in each other's lives. Mystique could be herself with Destiny and express all her concerns about Rogue and all kinds of other things. And funnily enough, worries about the future with a precog. It must be interesting. So in the past, Mystique would sometimes transform into a man at times when these two were out in public. It was postulated that a lot of this was to skirt around the Comics Code authority, while others feel it was a fanon that grew to become accepted and has been incorporated into canon. Either way, I'm not reaching, and it feels good. Number 8, Lex Luthor and Amanda Waller. Back to brief fly moments. So this comes to us from Superman/Batman, the series from 2003, and the first big story arc, Public Enemies. Just everything. This is from the time Lex is president, and of course he's evil, and of course he's trying to kill Clark. And in the process he ends up getting himself all jacked up, and making out with a very surprised, perplexed Amanda Waller. Waller and Lex working together isn't too hard to buy, though working adjacent to each other would probably be a better way to put it. But these two are way too dedicated to their respective clandestine tasks for this to be a thing. They would just have massive files on each other. Does Lex hook up with people? Does Waller? Now I've fallen down a rabbit hole. But what else is new?
Intend for you to play a role in all this. A very important role.
Mr. President, Hawkman.
Number 7, Harley Quinn and Red Tool. So some would classify this more as an anti-hero couple, but killing for money? I don't know. But leave that aside for a moment, because this relationship, or flirtation rather, is quite interesting. In comic fandom, one of the biggest Harley Quinn ships is the crossover pairing between her and Deadpool, which is only ramped up as DC has made her more and more Deadpool-esque. So in her new 52 series and beyond, a character named Red Tool was introduced, an extremely blatant Deadpool stand-in. He was completely in love with her in an insane, I'ma kidnap you so we can go to the carnival kind of way. She treats him pretty horribly for the most part. Except when she needs him though. Over time, the two come to develop a friendship, though he's essentially the Harley to her anti-hero Joker. He's just Deadpool. It works for some people, but for others they fall into characterception. So Red Tool is Deadpool, who was at first modeled off of Deathstroke because he was Wade Wilson instead of Slade Wilson. Comicception. Red Tool isn't replacing Joker or Ivy or even Deadshot for most fans anytime soon. Number 6, Namor and Emma Frost. Man, was this one unhealthy. And an affair. But they're tenuous anti-heroes at best, though Emma ranges a bit more, and villains at their worst. Namor and Emma Frost. This happened when they were working together and was particularly prominent in Uncanny X-Men. Emma was with Cyclops at the time, but Namor persuaded her with his smooth, "Why can't we do this? You're not married, you're just bound by a whim and a word." Can you feel how much he wishes Sue would leave Reed in that sentence? Cause I can. So these two would hook up and are quite the power couple. They also work because they both know it's a no strings attached type deal, but they're both really cold. Ice cold. I wasn't surprised by this. I mean, Emma and Scott's relationship started off as a psychic affair where she would sometimes roleplay as Jean. And there are strong hints that Namor likes how much Emma looks like Sue. It's all very messed up, which is par for the course for a villain relationship. It's to be expected in my opinion, like they're not great people. It's not that odd that they would have flawed relationships when even the so-called virtuous heroes do. But you do get some gems in there, surprises. Number 5, Nightwing and Shawn. So after Rebirth, Nightwing was relaunched, and there was some attempts to give him a new love interest, not Starfire, not Babs, who were doing different things at the time. Someone new. Enter Shawn, who was a real minor villain. The comic even at times calls her an activist. So she would graffiti things, and she was called the Defacer. Is it the Silver Age? Because they want their character names back. In Rebirth, he was supposed to have met her while he was still working with Batman, but despite being essentially a tag artist, she was a match for Dick in every way because of her father. Her big plot with Dick was that she was maybe pregnant. Pregnancy scare. Dun dun dun. This relationship did not end up lasting. Number 4, Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom. This comes to us from Avengers: The Children's Crusade, a miniseries where we see the young Avengers seeking out Wanda because Wiccan, her son, through complicated retcon, has begun to experience his own reality-altering powers. So he wanted to make sure he didn't, unmake the universe. So when he finds out she's at Doom's castle, he goes to rescue her, only to find her in Doom's colors, which in comics is an instant romance cue. You change your color scheme, you might as well go buy a house together. In fact, when Wiccan asks if she's okay, she says, yup, she's marrying Doom tomorrow. So she's great. Baroness Von Doom, here we come. But it turns out that this wasn't a genuine courtship, which is a shame since the two do have a lot in common. Instead, it was Doom who was manipulating her to be with him in a bid to keep her sane, and keep her away from the memories of her past self, the whole no more mutants thing, also House of M. This was to make sure she wouldn't wipe out a whole species again or almost wipe them out. But Wanda remembers, and actually after a bit of finagling goes back to Doom, but not romantically, but for help, because he's such a master sorcerer and all, but there seem to be some lingering feelings there. But the ritual they have to do turns Doom back into Hot Doom, which we can never have. That's not the status quo anymore. So he poofs out, so broken up, I guess? I would have been down for more of this though. Number 3, Supergirl and Lex Luthor. Now Supergirl has had some intriguing romances, with Brainiac 5, with her horse, Comet. That was when he was posing as a man. But the Lex plot was a bit disturbing. At first it appeared she was with his son, Alexander Luthor Jr., which would have been okay. But then it turned out that Lex was inside his son's body posing as his own son. But this Supergirl was slightly different, she was known as Matrix, there was other Earth stuff involved, it was pretty convoluted. However, Luthor wasn't even with her because he wanted to be with her, it's because he wanted to develop clones of her, which is pretty standard Lex fare, just look at Connor. Clones everywhere. But that's a relationship ender, so she dumped him back in 1994. Number 2, Wolverine and Mystique. So remember when Wolverine was all no sloppy seconds? Well, he doesn't mean it, because he ended up hooking up with Mystique, even though I guess technically he was the first. It doesn't matter, it's still a gross line. The two actually met back in 1921, and she used him in a bank robbery, but these two would always drift together because of, their connection and the fact that they've both been around for longer than other people, and will be around for longer than other people after too. They have also moved in the same circles, kind of on opposite sides. They just kind of fall into each other, sometimes, but it rarely lasts. Too much bad blood and history between them. Mystique has her beliefs, and Logan has his angst and his pain, and the twain very rarely meet. But this is one that some fans would like to see more of. Would you? Let me know down below. And number 1, Batman and Nocturna. let's be real, I have a hard time seeing Batman turn down many of his rogues if they propositioned him. If you wrote it right, you could probably get away with it. He really wants to see them get better, to see the light. So at one point in his history, he had a relationship with Nocturna. This is pre-Crisis Nocturna. This plot, oh man. So Nocturna became one of those people who was entangled with both Bruce Wayne and Batman, but she also got into a custody battle with him for Jason. She was a surrogate mother to him and even adopted him. And you know what she didn't do? Sleep with him. Looking at you, Talia. But she didn't want to take Jason away from Bruce, so she proposed the next best solution in her eyes, an actual proposal. The two would get married and be Jason's parents together. Poor Jason, just being used as a pawn. She was actually in love with Bruce, and they did get married. But obviously, it did not last.
Starting off our list with an honorable mention at number 10, we have Captain Carter. Normally, I'd put my girl Peggy higher up on any list, but since she's less weird and more awesome, we've gotta put her here. Captain Carter actually originally debuted in the Marvel Puzzle Quest video game during a celebration for Captain America's 75th anniversary, but was given a fully fleshed out backstory and has been a fan favorite ever since. In a universe where Steve Rogers is assassinated before he can be given the super soldier serum, Peggy Carter is instead the one who becomes an incredibly strong and iconic hero for the Allied forces. The comics would continue her adventures, with her universe's New York City coming under attack with nuclear weapons by the Red Skull, and eventually lead to her joining the superhero team the Exiles after their multiverse-spanning adventures brought them into contact. Next up on our list is the center point for one of the most controversial Marvel storylines of all time, the infamous Hydra Cap. Initially appearing to be the main Marvel Universe's Captain America, this version of Steve Rogers had grown up indoctrinated by Hydra's fascist ideologies and was actually sent to America to kill the creator of the superhuman serum for the Axis powers, but instead wound up deceiving his way into receiving the serum himself. Having wound up in the main Marvel Universe when their Steve Rogers was rejuvenated back to his usual age in a different storyline, this Hydra Cap was able to hide his evil intentions until the pivotal moment that he declared to the world those shocking words, "Hail Hydra." Seeing one of comics' most inspiring icons twisted in such a way was definitely unexpected, and definitely earns a surprising spot on this list. Coming in at number 8, we have the blood-sucking Vampire Cap. In a universe where Captain America fought and then lost against the villain Baron Blood, soon the entire Avengers team was overtaken by his vampiric disease. Consumed with a lust for both blood and power, this Steve Rogers began a year-long killing spree that culminated in killing Baron Blood and taking his place as the new Vampire King. This version had all of the benefits of the Super Soldier Serum, in addition to new vampire abilities such as healing so advanced, he was able to survive getting decapitated when facing off against several other Marvel heroes. I guess going for the head isn't as effective as we all thought.
Number 7, JLA Act of God. Admittedly, this is a cool premise, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense, which is what's weird about it. In JLA Act of God and Elseworlds 3-issue miniseries, we get to explore a world where all the heroes of Earth have simultaneously lost their powers. Well, at least almost all of them anyways. How did this happen? Black light? Somehow the world being hit with a flash of black light results in almost everyone losing their powers. I guess normally superheroes don't go to raves or anything, where black light is, I feel very common. Although this is attributed to the black light, some might call it an act of God. A later on, very suddenly, devoutly Christian Diana Prince at least would probably claim that. Diana, haven't you met gods? How does that make sense? What's really ridiculous is in the first issue, as we go through the moment this happened, the world over, we get to see just how diverse not only everyone's powers are, but also when it comes to the source of their powers, just how diverse it is. In one page, we go from Steel losing complete control of his systems and suit as he plummets to his doom, to Aquaman losing his ability to connect with the creatures of the sea telepathically and his ability to breathe underwater. At the same time, Kyle Rayner also has lost control of his Green Lantern ring, which seems to now just be, I guess, a really unique and trendy looking accessory. How could a flash of black light affect almost everyone in this same way? Like I said, it's a cool premise, kinda wonky execution though. How is Steel affected by this? Didn't steel make his suit? I'm confused. Number 6, facets. What happens when we get to see the Teen Titans as they be in a fantasy setting? Well, a whole lot of weirdness. Raven, of course, ends up evil, known as a deadly and beautiful sorceress, Queen Raven. She creates her own loyal servant and accomplice with Victor Stone, or at least she tries to, transforming him permanently into a cyborg. It turns out this isn't all that Raven's been up to, though. She has a whole collection of prisoners whom she has transformed in some way, and when Cyborg refuses to join her, she also contemplates holding him there with the rest of them. So apparently she does this a lot. Seems like her deals with people don't usually work out. I guess she's just hoping that one day that'll change. She's like, I'll just keep doing it. Eventually someone will be loyal to me. If I try it enough times, it's gotta work. In this story, Coriander is a prisoner of some goblin mages who use cosmic energy to transform her into Starfire. The comic features an all-out battle between Raven and Starfire, joined of course by the rest of the Titans. Nightwing goes on a trip inside Phantasm's cloak, literally looks like he's tripping out, and eventually Trigon joins the party when he is summoned by his daughter Raven. You can check it all out in the 1994 New Titans Annual. It's weird. It's definitely weird. Also, some of these outfits are interesting. Number 5, Superman at Earth's End. I don't even know where to begin with this comic. Oh boy. Okay, so Superman here is one of the first iterations of course, the old man heroes to come that we've come to love so much. See, before there was Old Man Logan, there was Old Man Supes. In this Elseworld story, we are in a post-apocalyptic future where machines rule supreme and mutants basically run amok. Also, there is an army of Batmen and vicious biker gangs because I mean, why not? The year I believe is 2102, so possibly this is what we'll be dealing with in just over 80 years time. Honestly, the way things are going, I could maybe see that being our future. Superman is recharging and recuperating his strength when he hears about the plan to nuke Gotham City. He aims to save the city, but of course without doing any killing because, you know, he's Superman. And of course, no guns because he's Superman, except for the part where he uses guns to kill people. Except for that part. Mostly robo and really bad people though, so I guess for Supes it doesn't count. It features the famous I am a man memeable moment, which actually was shouted in response to an android by the way, so out of context it's really weird, but within context it actually like kinda makes some sense. It's still pretty weird, but it's not as weird. Also, shortly after claiming that he doesn't need weapons, Superman chooses to wield a ridiculous mega gun known as the Expunger. It's crazy. I just love that he's like, I don't need weapons because I have powers. I would never do that. And then like flip to like 2 pages later and he's like, look at this giant expunger. I'm gonna use this mega gun. Number 4, All-Star Batman and Robin. Not so much a story as a full series, but I have other full series on this list, so it's fine. All-Star Batman and Robin consists of 10 issues, all of which are pretty weird when it comes to the depiction and characterization of a lot of our favorite superheroes, villains, and their allies even. Once again, we get a super jacked version of Joker in this comic. We also get a version of Vicky Vale who seems far more obsessed with Superman's manhood and dates with Bruce Wayne than any kind of serious reporting. And of course, then there are Batman and Robin. What a dynamic. Batman in this comic is the worst kind of hero, an entitled one. This is the version who refers to himself as the goddamn Batman and makes Dick eat rats and sleep in the Batcave initially. Because he's Batman and he can do that. He also torments Hal Jordan Green Lantern by painting himself, Robin, and the entire room and corridor yellow, and also serves and consumes yellow food and drink around him, with Batman enjoying some lemonade and Robin devouring what appears to be an all yellow ice cream cone. All-Star Batman and Robin has to be one of the weirdest multiverses out there. And every time I go back to it, I'm like, what is happening? What is this characterization? Number 3, JLA created equal. Okay, so All-Star Batman and Robin is the not so great kind of weird, but JLA created equal is just the weird kind of weird. In this 2-part Elseworld story, we get a glimpse into a world where all the men, or almost all the men, were killed off by an unexpected and sudden plague. The only 2 left alive are Superman and Lex Luthor in this reality, and yet for all the powerful women who remain, this book sure manages to still be about the male characters within it. In Created Equal, Superman attempts to help the rest of the new, almost all-female JLA figure out a way to repopulate the Earth. I say almost because Superman's still there, so yeah. The main concern is how to ensure the survival of the human male gender, as if they made clones with their technology and resources, they'd actually only be able to produce female ones. I guess they can't like tamper with the genes, they can't like tamper with the DNA, or I don't know how you make clones anyway, so I probably shouldn't tell other people how to do it. Eventually, Lois Lane and Clark Kent end up conceiving a son who is born and named Adam. He accidentally hugs his mother to death, and then Lex, being Lex, unleashes a plan to take control of all the young men who were created and raised on Themyscira, thanks to Adam's existence and his resilience. Also, he makes them all bald, because this is Lex Luthor, so yeah. Oh, what a weird story. Come and join me, and also I'll be bald, because you all have lovely hair and it offends me. Number 2, a Batman Reptilian. Ah yes, the story of an alien baby that belongs to Killer Croc because he was influenced by aliens while inside his mother's womb, which is how he's even mutated and also makes him like, I guess, a hybrid alien-human creation technically. In this beautiful yet bizarre story, Batman is attempting to track down whoever is killing all of his rogues. What he finds out though is that it isn't any one of the other villains, but Croc's baby that he just gave birth to. Killer Croc, of course, didn't know that he could do that. I mean, neither did we. It turns out that this is a result of him being part alien in origin, or being tampered with by aliens when he was like a fetus. The newborn babe, it turns out, just wants its mama, but for what purpose remains to be seen. Killer Croc can't nurture it, as you know, he doesn't have like the biological equipment for that. After we get through that whole slog of that's not gonna work, it's also implied that the giant alien monster baby wants Croc to mate with it, which is also thankfully out of the question when it comes to Croc's willingness, so thank goodness, because I thought this better not be where this is going. Oh my goodness. Did I mention that Batman is also a huge jerk throughout this entire series? Cause yeah, this is Garth Ennis behind the writing wheel, and that is very much a thing. Which I'm not surprised by. That's kind of Ennis' whole thing, so yeah. I actually like Batman being a butt in that story more than I like him being a butt in Frank Miller's All-Star, so yeah. Number 1, Batman Last Night on Earth. This one was where the thumb came from in part 1 of this list. I had intended to actually include this story there, but then I got distracted by the Batman and Lobo crossover. Understandably so, I think, because that's also super weird. But that's fine, because it just means that Last Night on Earth gets a higher spot on this list of bizarre multiversal DC stories. Batman Last Night on Earth is a book that exists outside of the continuity and belongs to the DC Black Label line. Also, Reptilian is part of that same line, just so you know. Black Label primarily is made up of titles that are more adult in terms of their content and their themes. Here, that translates to Batman wearing a straitjacket version of his suit in a post-apocalyptic future, where Joker is just a head in a jar. They also end up fighting giant monster baby Green Lantern constructs in issue number 1, just to give you a sense of the level of weird that we're dealing with here. But it's like a fun weird. It's like a, I'd recommend this weird. I give it 2 weird thumbs up.
Number 10, Magneto and the Wasp. Magneto has been on the side of good before. He's even run Xavier's school for him, like when he died, that first time, not the other times. Sometimes. Their friendship is bizarre but strong, so he counts, even though in the arc where this happened, he was in more of an anti-hero mode. This occurred during the massively successful Marvel event Secret Wars, the first one from 1984, not the sequel or the new one from 2015. In this first one, a group of heroes and villains are suddenly plucked from existence and dumped onto a planet to duke it out, to battle each other and see who will win. And when they're grabbed on the side of the heroes, Magneto is there, so hardly a reach, barely a stretch. So in Secret Wars, Magneto kidnaps Wasp by trapping her in a metal ball and taking her over to his base, as he was driven out by the heroes at the start of the event because they didn't trust him. Well, Charles wanted to keep him there, but he was overruled. He kidnaps Wasp and begins to lay it on real thick. He's not a monster. He wants to discuss a team up. He respects her as a leader. She was leading the Avengers at this point. He thinks she's beautiful, and it looks like it's working, making out all over the place. But haha, it was a ruse. She was playing along to learn his plan to take back to the heroes. But for this issue where it's happening, I'm like, man, if only it wasn't so kidnappy and creepy. I can get behind this, and say what you want about Magneto, but he's not gonna slap her in the face. Number 9, Black Canary and Hawkeye. Yes, you heard that right, you haven't gone mad. But they're from 2 separate companies, you cry. Why do they only hire fake nerds? Calm down, it's okay. DC and Marvel have done more crossovers than people think, and this occurred during one of them, specifically in JLA/Avengers. In this story, Kronos, with a K, had smashed the 2 realities together, creating a combined universe, but not an amalgam Amalgam one. In this one they were still separate characters. In the Amalgam universe they were all fused together like Darkclaw. So in this story we see reality shift and reshape itself over and over, and in one of these shifts not only is Hawkeye a member of the Justice League, but he's with Black Canary, and he apparently crossed dimensions to be with her. The League seems behind this too, with Diana proclaiming that they're a cute couple to Batman, but Green Arrow looks salty and pressed, as he should. A blip, but we'll explore a crossover couple more in depth a little later. Number 8. Superman and Supergirl from Action Comics number 289 from 1962. Kissin' Cousins, the comic. This is where Superman marries Supergirl, his cousin. Legit, I'm not making it up. So Superman in this issue is talking about how he would marry his cousin since it's legal on Krypton, and he for some reason cares about that even though he's lived his whole life on Earth with Earth values, but I digress, and he does bring up it's legal some places on Earth too. So he's been thinking about this. He actually tells Supergirl that if he ever were to get married it would be to someone like her. Through Silver Age magic he ends up on another Earth and there meets a grown-up alternate version of his cousin named Luma Lanai, and she is super into the idea. And Clark, he can't resist someone with 2 L's in their name. Lois Lane, Lana Lang, Lex Luthor. Yeah, this comic has been pushed out of the minds of many readers, and Luma seems to have been permanently erased in Crisis. Sometimes they still bring this concept up, like them flirting, but stop. They're not Luke and Leia, please stop. Number 7. Wonder Girl and Robin. We're talking about Cassandra Sandsmark as Wonder Girl and Tim Drake as Robin. Now initially Wonder Girl was with Superboy, Connor Kent, the version that was Lex and Clark's son, well biologically at least, because he was made up of both of their DNA. But then Connor died, and Connor was also Tim's best friend, and so the two grieved together, and in their grief ended up seeking comfort in each other. Comfort that bloomed into a relationship, and a genuine one, a non-Connor wrapped up one. Though there was guilt, much guilt. Even more guilt when it turned out that like most people, Connor got better and came back, and his best friend was with his girlfriend. Awkward. Tim Drake had drama. I missed him. He's been a bit more sidelined in Rebirth. Yeah, he's Red Robin, but it's not the same. The Robin cycle in the Who's the One We Know the Least to Do What With Right Now department. Number 6. Spider-Man and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. This happened when she was Ms. Marvel. Spider-Man and Carol are contemporaries, and at one point he had developed quite the interest in her, a crush. And she, for all of her sniping at him, does respect him. He actually kind of barters for their date. She needs a favor from him, and he's all, I'll do it if I get a date, and she's like, okay, but clearly doesn't mind and is all, I trust you. She probably thought he wouldn't show up given his track record, but he does. So the two end up going out to eat. It's not the worst date either of them have been on. She asks him about Osborn, they chat histories, it's pretty cozy, but they end up not being able to talk about anything but work. Cause really, that's the most of what they have in common, but this pairing would creep up a few times. It's not the most popular for either of these two though. Number 5. Wolverine and Squirrel Girl. Yes, you heard that right. Just think about it, cause this happened, largely off panel, but they linger on the hints of it when it comes up, and apparently it ended badly. This is mentioned in New Avengers number 7 from 2010, when Wolverine enters the mansion and sees her going, Doreen, and she goes, James, so you know it was serious. I thought we promised to never see each other again. Then he has to awkwardly tell her that he's on the team, so she'll be seeing much more of him. Squirrel Girl was Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's nanny at the time. Well, their daughter's nanny, not their nanny. This led to speculation that vacillates between being confirmed and unconfirmed, that Wolverine, or James, was Squirrel Girl's first love and that he took her virginity. Cause these are the facts the world needs. The two would grow to at least be cordial. Number 4. Spider-Man and Kitty Pryde. What romance list is complete without a trip to the now infamous Ultimate Verse? Well, many lists actually, but not this one. Marvel's Ultimate Verse did a lot of tweaking of characters' ages and gave us a whole group of heroes firmly teens, lots of them going to school together, or at least learning that they were the same age when identities were revealed. Such was the case with Spider-Man and Shadowcat. He actually started dating her after breaking up with Mary Jane because he was tired of always putting her in danger and worrying about her. And Kitty, thanks to her power set and training, could more than hold her own. They would also team up and fight crime together. This would be one of Peter's great loves in the Ultimate Verse, and provide much confusion for readers who accidentally picked up an Ultimate Verse comic thinking it was the main verse one. You can make the label as big as you want. Mistakes still happen. Of course, Spidey would die in this verse, making way for Miles Morales, although he would be brought back to life, cause death in comics means as much as Peter's word that he's gonna show up someplace on time. Nothing. Number 3. Black Widow and Daredevil. This is actually, or was actually, one of the great Marvel romances. Matt Murdock and Natasha was serious business, and people who remember have made some cool crossover fanvids, check them out. These two loved each other, and Black Widow would even confess to him that she loved him, which is a big deal for her. But Daredevil was always worrying that it wasn't meant to be, or that they were just too different, or too dedicated to their respective missions and different goals. Ultimately, he would prove himself right. He would leave Hell's Kitchen, but would grow resentful and in Mrs. City. So he would go back, and eventually the two would both be involved in more famous romances. Daredevil with Elektra, and currently the big one for Natasha is her and Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Thanks to the whole backstory that they knew each other in the Red Room, which is a great retcon. Not all retcons are created equal, some are good. Oh man, the salt, I'm sorry, you probably felt that through the screen. Writers remember this happened though, so it comes up, but for new readers it can be a what? Wait, number 2, Captain America and Scarlet Witch. You have no idea how badly I wanted to put Wanda and Doom on here, but there was mind control involved, so I went wholesome instead. Quality content. Also, I just learned people are now calling this pairing Scarlet America, and I'm here for it, but also Captain Scarlet or Captain Witch. Think about it. This has happened more than once, such as in the comic Captain America and the Falcon or the Uncanny Avengers, just to name a couple. Couple fun. These two often strike people as an odd pair, but it's a soft pairing. The two is people who can trust each other with their pain, and also Cap trusts Wanda even after everything, which is a big deal for her. And she sees some of the darker sides of Cap, like his post-war trauma, and can help him through it. But like I said, this one comes out of nowhere for some people. But this could maybe work. Give wholesome power couples a chance. And number 1, Rogue and Deadpool. Yes, this happened. Here they are making out in the sky, something comics like to portray as if it would be romantic and not terrifying. This is from the same run as our last number, the Uncanny Avengers, or the team known as Avengers Unity Squad. While on this team, Rogue and Deadpool got to know each other, and Rogue found herself coming to like Wade, who was on more of an even keel at the time. She really started to develop a soft spot for him when she learned about his daughter Ellie, and saw how hard he was trying to be a good father. So the two would have a fling. It would be brief and have an artificially constructed moment, where she kisses him, in the sky, and absorbs his powers and his appearance, even though she probably shouldn't have absorbed that part. But it's still sweet, because she says that she doesn't care what he looks like. This was adorable, two misunderstood souls together, but now it's treated as a joke, especially in the Rogue Gambit miniseries. I don't know, I thought it was cute. What do you think? Number 10, Batman and Wonder Woman. So this one is at number 10 because, well, this pops up a decent amount and was even part of the DCAU, that being the DC Animated Universe, with Wonder Woman being a pretty aggressive go-getter about it. Most people in that canon remember that episode where Wonder Woman gets turned into a pig, and to change her back, Batman has to sing for Cersei, and he does. It's all very sweet. However, in comics, this has been flirted with as well. It's usually as an Elseworlds thing, but they were also together during the Obsidian Age saga, a post-crisis arc that now no longer counts. Like so many things, so many universes reset. This one falls into a Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex argument for some, saying that Batman would be too fragile. I mean, remember when she shoved him in Snyder's Justice League? Another series that was hinting hard at this. When people tend to pair Wonder Woman in the Trinity, it tends to be with Superman, but that will run into a backlash with some of being too obvious, where they felt that Batman and Diana is a more unique dynamic. Which do you prefer and why? Tell me down below. How do you feel about Wonderbat? Yes, I use the ship name. I'm that type of person. You know this by now. Number 9, Nightwing and the Huntress. Here we go, post-crisis. So Helena Wayne has become Helena Bertinelli, and is now a loose cannon who does what it takes to get the job done. She would end up having a relationship, a brief one, with Nightwing during one of his more angsty periods. They would even have a mini-series together where their dynamics would bounce off of each other. Her succeed at all costs, and his Batman training, which more often expressed itself in the need for limits. It was a 4-issue mini. He tries to get her to change her ways and gives her the whole "we're both lonely" speech, which is a bold play, but if you get the person at the right time, can be super effective, and it works here. I mean, this gets them sleeping together, and then Barbara calls and it's super awkward because they were a thing, and he's all, "Shh, you'll wake her up." Like, wait a hint, Dick, you didn't have to say that. She's over there. So this was a kinda sorta love triangle, but not really. It ended up being treated as a bit more of a physical thing, and it would carry over into new timelines, but it's not, for most people anyway, who people envision either of these characters with. Dick has his ship war with Barbara and Starfire, and there was a big push for Huntress and The Question, largely thanks to the Justice League cartoon, where they were super cute.
Maybe you're not looking in the right direction. You're the League's data guy, the conspiracy buff, right? Wildcat says you're a nut job.
Funny, he says the same thing about you.
He's right.
Number 8, Spider-Man and Mockingbird. So Spider-Man has had many a superpowered or superhero girlfriend, and one of them has been Mockingbird, who was actually married to Hawkeye for a bit. I'm telling you, Hawkeye, secret relationship ninja. Now, Spider-Man and Mockingbird was set up as a bit of a mismatch, but was also supposed to be the relationship that was going to help Marvel move past One More Day. One More Day is the infamous storyline that ended Peter and MJ's marriage via demon divorce, and for many, MJ and Peter are endgame. So this this was a relationship. She was Spider-Man's super spy girlfriend, who started hooking up with him while Peter was the head of Parker Industries, and had his life in order. However, from the start there were signs, like for example, Bobby didn't find Peter funny, and he quips all the time. Red flags. And then Peter would be reset again. So he would go from I have a job and things are working out right back to he's a menace and he has no job and can't figure anything out. Time to crash on her couch and then go find a roommate. Yeah, so she didn't want much to do with this Peter. I can't imagine why. And now has a very looking down on, mean to him, but she secretly still cares dynamic. Or she did. These things shift. Mostly now it's a, hey, we used to date, and it's super awkward. You know how we could have avoided all of this? By having writers who understand that writing marriage can be interesting and dynamic. You just have to apply more than baseline effort. And I'm gonna rein in my salt, because I'm about to reveal my true form. A little Star Trek joke for you. Number 7, Robin and Spoiler. So this Robin is again Tim Drake. So much Tim on these lists, and for younger fans I know it's like, Tim? So Tim Drake for a time had quite the relationship with Spoiler, Stephanie Brown. This was the persona she took on before her death and subsequent resurrection in War Games, where she was Robin. As her death was met with an immediate and intense backlash, especially because it could be read as largely being Batman's fault, and not for a good reason either. She would later become Batgirl, but while she was Spoiler, she was initially largely a foil for Robin. She was the daughter of the villain Cluemaster, who is largely a knockoff of the Riddler, and her and Robin had a teen pregnancy plot. And it was acclaimed. People really enjoyed these two together and felt it was a fresh and more mature look at a teen romance for the time. However, this would end after the whole Robin shenanigans where she was Robin. But they would still have a bit of a push and pull. We were together. It's too bad. It was a unique dynamic. This was who Tim was with when Jubilee was trying to hit on him, by the way. Fun fact. Number 6, Psylocke and Cyclops. So Cyclops has a thing for telepaths and also for cheating apparently. This occurred in the 90s and was when she joined an X-team that Cyclops was leading and found herself drawn to him, decided to seduce him. He didn't really object too much at first. He loves the psychic mindscape play stuff. So this was still cheaty, cause we're past him abandoning his wife and baby to hang out with Jean, but this followed pretty shortly after and he was now back with Jean. And so to some fans it was like, okay, so did Madeline mean nothing? Did Jean mean nothing? Like these are supposed to be the great loves of his life. And then here comes Psylocke. She would employ some of the same mind play things that Emma would do later on in the new X-Men, which were also super effective. Minus the creepy mindscape therapy pretending to be Jean, there's a lot. He would ultimately stay with Jean though, and then Cable would show up as an adult, so no time for cheating. Number 5, The Hood and Madame Mask. So just after saying that, we have a surprisingly Swedish one. So the Hood is a newer villain created in 2002, while Madame Mask is from the 60s and was a villainous romantic interest for Iron Man. Brian Michael Bendis wanted to do something with the Hood, as he felt he was a great new creation that not a lot was being done with. And one of the things he did was give him a romance with Madame Mask. And what can I say? I'm a sucker for the I don't care how you look angle. Like he sees the villain within and was there for it. For a time. And also, can we talk about how Madame Mask and Iron Man used to make out with their masks on? How? I have questions. Was it just metal bashing against each other? That's what it looks like. Number 4, Scandal Savage and Knockout. Scandal Savage is also a newer creation from 2005 made for Gail Simone's Secret Six series. She was the daughter of Vandal Savage, meaning he was finally catching up with Ra's al Ghul in the children department. She would be an integral member of the Secret Six and form a relationship with Knockout, who first debuted in Superboy Volume 3, number 1 back in 1994. She was a former female Fury, so this was a power couple for sure, and one of the more together villain relationships out there for a time. But Scandal's also the type to compartmentalize and keep her feelings close to her chest. This relationship gained attention for being an open queer relationship. Gail Simone is all about that. Number 3, Mystique and Sabretooth. So Mystique and Sabretooth's union is one that produces horrifying results for the Marvel Universe, in that the two have a son together, Graydon Creed, a huge figure in the anti-mutant movement. He formed the Friends of Humanity. Mystique keeps an eye on Graydon, who she gave up for adoption, and wow, that must be a really disappointing stakeout. So Mystique seduced Sabretooth, aka Victor Creed, while he was in Germany on a mission, and she was undercover as a spy. So at first, not exactly the most out and open pairing, though it would become one later on. Mystique isn't bound by what people look like. They're both passionate and have a kind of instinctual understanding of each other. They can be a bit of a bastion in between the madness that is their lives. Did you know they had a team-up comic? Yeah, they did. Sabretooth and Mystique. So people were here for this. You don't just get a team-up comic. Well, I mean, sometimes you do, if they're trying to boost one of the popularities of the characters, but it has to be people the company thinks fans will want to see together. Number 2, Carnage and Shriek. Yes, there was a romance for Carnage, bizarre twisted romance, just like you'd expect, well, if you were expecting a romance at all. Both of these characters are from the 90s. Her and Carnage would team up in the event Maximum Carnage, a crossover from 1993, which was as extreme as it sounds. She is one of the people Cassidy Carnage frees when he escapes from Ravencroft. They would recruit Doppelganger, Demoglobin, and Carrion and place themselves in the position of being parents to them like a dysfunctional symbiote family. Shriek was all over him, and some fans were all over this, just crazy villains doing their utmost to, well, do what villains do best. These two still get fan art. There's kind of a proto-Joker Harley thing going on here, but it branches off pretty quickly.
What in the name of? It is my master, Dormammu, who confers this gift upon you, Cassidy.
And number 1, Thanos and Hela. You probably saw this one. This was one of those things that got articles galore. Articles with headlines like, Thanos and Hela just got steamy. No, stop. Why all the press? Well, Thanos and Hela were big in the MCU popularity charts at the time. This began in the unworthy Thor number 5. But really, is it that odd? Hela is the goddess of death, and Thanos was formerly obsessed with death. So it's really almost like a transference. Two cosmic beings who will be around for much longer than most of their enemies. Though, well, not Thor, because he's nigh immortal. Do you support this, or do you feel like it was one of those horizontal marketing things to try and draw attention? Cross-promotion is very real, and sometimes is subtle.
And at 10, Poison. Poisons are a species of crystalline extraterrestrials spawned by the Poison Queen. Originating on Earth 17952, the Poisons spent an unknown amount of time as prey for larger, stronger creatures before discovering that they could assimilate symbiotes and their hosts to become more powerful. Poison Captain Marvel was the Poison who assimilated Venomized Captain Marvel of Earth 81622. Poison Captain Marvel attacked D-Man and Rage on Manhattan Bridge alongside Poison Killer Thrill, Poison Hyperion, Poison Gamora, and Poison Thing in order to attract more powerful heroes. Kind of a burn. This attack led to the creation of Poison D-Man, Poison Rage, and Poison Thor. However, this poison most likely died along with the others when the Queen was killed by the time-displaced Jean Grey. And at 9, Imposter. Part of a training program with the intent of eventually replacing Earth's heroes, this Skrull was permanently turned into a copy of the Kree warrior Mar-Vell to avoid any possible detection. However, a problem emerged when the real Mar-Vell died, so this Skrull was no longer useful in the training program, and he couldn't really return to his true form, preventing him from returning to his normal life. However, he wasn't just going to lie down and die, so the Skrull allied himself with 2 other Skrulls in the same situation, posing as the deceased heroes of John Proudstar and Adam Warlock. After some time, they had a run-in with Kitty Pryde, who they mistook for her Skrull imposter and then took prisoner. But realizing that she was the real deal and that Galactus was about to arrive, they let her go and joined forces with her and Wolverine in an attempt to save their people and the X-Men. The Skrull was ultimately gunned down by another Skrull when he attempted to stop a Skrull general from keeping people from getting on board a spaceship, I'm guessing to evacuate. And at 8, Rogue. When Rogue touched Ms. Marvel to absorb her powers, Carol grabbed onto her arm and didn't let go. So in addition to Carol's Kree DNA glitching up Rogue's powers, the prolonged contact caused each to end up absorbing the powers, memories, and personality of the others. They kind of swapped places. Rogue sought out Professor X's help, and afterwards she was sent to space as a consequence of an encounter with Brood. Rogue and Carol Danvers were briefly visited by Carol's counterpart from the Prime Marvel universe using the powers of the Reality Stone, since the gem links her to the other wielders of the gem in other realities, and they can all kind of like communicate, with the wielder of this Earth being Anna Marie. They talked about the differences between their lines before the visiting Carol was pulled to Earth 70875. But yeah, Rogue having Carol Danvers' powers, that's actually pretty weird.
Number 7, Earth X. James Howlett from Earth 9997, and here he's actually not a mutant, he's pure human. We learned that Wolverine's ancestors were actually a group of early humans known as the Moon Clan. What happened was when the first celestial host arrived, it blocked out the moon, and the moon, to the Moon Clan, I mean, they worshipped the thing, so when it disappeared, so did they. They ducked out in a cave, they weren't sure what was going on, but they wanted no part of it. They were one of the few links of humanity that weren't manipulated by the Celestials, so Logan's natural DNA was now able to evolve, growing into his abilities like enhanced senses, bone claws, healing factors, all the good stuff. So when Charles recruited him into the X-Men, he might have have been aware that Logan isn't truly a mutant. So next time there's a lunar eclipse, I'm gonna go hide in a cave somewhere up north, you know, just to see what happens. Number 6, Days of Future Past. In the Age of Ultron comic, we see again a dark future where the Avengers are getting whooped. Ultron is using Vision as a conduit from the future, like the world's most painful game of telephone, and the Avengers don't really see a way to get Ultron to stop, so they send Sue Storm and Logan back in time to find a solution. Now, Logan's solution was to just straight up kill Hank Pym to make sure Ultron isn't created. But in doing so, this opened a dark alternate future, so when they go back to this new timeline they've created, the Kree-Skrull War is now moved to Earth, and they run into the Defenders of that timeline, and also Logan of that timeline. That's a lot of Logans in one story, but is there ever enough? Really? No, never. Number 5, The Hooded Man. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 558, the Hooded Man is James Howlett from the year 2509. Now at this point, he had given up the whole Wolverine alias, and now he was calling himself the Hooded Man. Reminds me of Hawkeye when he turned into Ronin in like Endgame. We love hooded people, especially Robin Hood, he's OG. Now in this future, he alongside the Fantastic Four have formed the New Defenders. The New Defenders use the body of a deceased Galactus to travel back in time. They transported their dead world to Earth 616, now their new world. Well, it's literally called that, New World, NU World. It's an exact replica of Earth. Ted Castle and others created this knowing that our current Earth would be uninhabitable in just a mere 30 years. So the New Defenders settled here with present day Fantastic Four, but eventually Logan, aka the Hooded Man, went back to his own reality to rebuild the population with Gaia. It's gonna be really busy. That's gonna be a busy time. Number 4, Helverine. First appearing in Wolverine Volume 4, Helverine was a fierce demon from the underworld, as if his name didn't maybe tip you off already. He first approached a man named Roger who hated Wolverine so much because he actually blamed the death of his wife on Wolverine. The demon then told Roger that if he joined the Red Right Hand, he would help him get revenge. So, sounds great, Mr. Demon, thank you so much. And then he disappeared. So he joined the organization, and he alongside other Right Hand members sacrificed a man and a woman in order to get the demon to come back again. The demon returned, took out those two people, and then in turn told Roger it was revenge time. All the while, Wolverine was tricked inside of a van where the founder, leader of the Red Right Hand, performed a ritual to have Helverine take over Wolverine's body. Helverine was then forced to attack all of his close friends, and as dark as this one is, I gotta say, it's one of my favorite versions of Wolverine. Maybe it's the Flaming Claws, maybe it's Maybelline, I don't know. I love him. Number 3, The End. In Wolverine The End, we see an aged Wolverine as he embarks to take down the last of the Weapon X program, all the while he's dealing with himself becoming less immortal. This six-parter is a great gloomy time. It opens with Wolverine in the snowy landscapes of Canada, struggling to even hunt a deer. Now it hurts him to retract his claws, you know, super arthritis ain't a joke, and now he has long white hair, and I gotta admit, watching him struggle is depressing but really entertaining. Because in this run he meets his long lost brother who has apparently been watching him for a long time, and his brother tries to make it seem like he's going to help him discover the secrets of his past, but really he's just using him to nuke Vegas. So in the end, literally the end of the end, Wolverine is holding his long lost brother's body. It's quite sad, but definitely worth a read. Bring tissues, you'll need them. Number 2, James Hudson Jr. Jimmy Hudson, okay, he first appeared back in the 2010s Ultimate X issue 1, but later on in Ultimate Comics Wolverine issue 4, he was the new Wolverine. Okay, who is this guy? So Jimmy Hudson is the son of Wolverine. So back when Logan was fighting in Iraq, he fought alongside a man named James Hudson, and they were pretty close because Logan trusted James enough to take care of his newborn son. Jimmy's last name was changed when the adoption became official, and Jimmy Jr. had no idea that he too was a mutant until his high school days. He took after his birth father even so. I mean, he was attracted to redheads, he was reckless, and of course, he was absolutely shredded. In Venomized, the Poison Hive invades Earth, and they force symbiotes to bond with various superhumans. When the X-Men helped out, Jimmy was bonded to one himself. And finally, number 1, Weapon H. Making his first appearance in Totally Awesome Hulk issue 21, Clayton Cortez was originally a Marine and former Eagle Star contractor whose team was originally hired to go after the villagers of Ujanka for sabotaging a Roxxon pipeline. Clay turned against his own men, saving lives, but he also put himself in a dark spot. He was captured and sold to Dr. Alba, head of Weapon X Batch H Division, which was this neat division that made Wolverine Hulk hybrids. Gotta love those. H Alpha was unlike the others because he wasn't recruited by Director Stryker, so he wasn't a true believer in his cause, and that Dr. Alba left more of his brain in there than the other subjects in hopes that he would train better. Okay, leave a little bit of brain left, see what happens. H Alpha had about 15 minutes to go in the incubation process when a group of mutants showed up and raided the place. So Dr. Alba released H Beta to buy time, but when H Alpha was finally done, he beheaded H Beta. And then the Hulk came in, which at the time was Amadeus Cho, and he came in to hold him back. It was just nuts. People are getting their heads cut off, there's Hulk hybrids everywhere. It's really loud. Must be a really loud day. Once the Weapon X staff left, Weapon H stopped fighting and then he jumped far away.
Number 10. So get ready. This one has to be low because I'm stretching hard for them to qualify. It's a mighty reach. Renee Montoya and Two-Face. Renee Montoya would become the Question and Two-Face was Harvey Dent. Boom, acceptable. Anyways, yeah, these two had a bit of an odd, kinda sorta one-sided courtship, mostly one-sided. This happened leading up to Gotham Central and was not romantic. This one's not cute. No hazelnut lips here. So during No Man's Land, the Batman arc where a giant earthquake devastated Gotham and villains took full advantage and Batman refused help from people who came offering it, like Superman cause, well, he's Batman, Renee Montoya became a go-between for the police force who remained and Two-Face, who is the leader of one of the sections of Gotham. She would try to connect with the Harvey Dent side of him, and it worked, only a little too well. Seeing how tirelessly she worked and how understanding she could be, he fell in love with her. His Dent persona would take over for part of this arc too, putting him temporarily in the good column, and at that point they had a good relationship. However, this would all end badly when he discovered she was a lesbian and proceeded to out her to her friends, family, and colleagues, hoping they would all reject her and she would have no choice but to be with him, the only person who truly loved her. Dark stuff. She obviously gave that a hard pass. Number 9. Batman and Batgirl, The Killing Joke, but also secretly some other places. The adaptation of The Killing Joke is now infamous for how poorly received the extended story featuring Barbara Gordon was well received. It was intended to give her more agency and character before her paralysis. It instead, for many fans, reduced her to a whining love interest who was more of a caricature, but some people loved it. Mileage varies. The character development would involve her struggling with balance of violence and being Batgirl, but also her proving she wasn't just a little girl by sleeping with Batman, just mounting him after they fight on a rooftop.
You wanted! I made it work! Ugh.
This activated for many people the "he's friends with her dad" alarm bells. But this is a result of a particular creator, Bruce Timm. Since Timm's days on the animated series, he has been hinting that Batgirl had a crush on Batman and that they had a thing. They would actually have a brief thing later in that DCAU continuity, and in Batman Beyond's timeline, which continues that continuity, Bruce Wayne would get her pregnant and she would miscarry in a fight, and that would lead to the rift between Bruce and Dick. This relationship, some people like it, many people don't, and even those that do feel it could be handled better than it has been at points. Rooftop sex. Raise the roof. Number 8. Batman and Black Canary. For most people, this comes to us from an Elseworlds non-canon story, but I'm putting it because everything about Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin is hilarious. Well, to me anyway. At one point in this tale, Batman ends up showing up after Black Canary has taken out some bike thugs, and actually he shows up just in time to help, and the two proceed to make out. It's all battle tension and fishnets. However, there have been some hints of this in main continuity from way back, like late Silver Age, early Bronze Age. Personally, I don't hate it. This panel about them breaking the bond of loneliness, it kinda got me. I feel like Bronze Age Batman would treat her better than Bronze Age Arrow, or Modern Age Arrow, even though she crossed universes to be with Green Arrow pre-Crisis. She'd also be good to all the Robins. Oh god, I think I ship this now. People like to throw this into Elseworld stories, but maybe it's time to shake up that main verse. No more Bat-Cat. Bat Canary. No one would stand for it, I know. Number 7. She-Hulk and Tony Stark. These two are players in the Marvel Universe, so it seemed like an inevitability that at one point they would end up together. It's more of a teammates with benefits type deal. But they have some deep discussions, and Tony respects her as a teammate, a friend, and a lawyer. Before what I like to call a digital era, they were pretty close. She also calls him out on his nonsense, which he oftentimes needs. His ego can get out of control. Still, these are often quick things, so some people are like, what? That happened? Yes, it did. There's also this joke about how he slept with Gamora and it was lame. That the sex was lame, not the joke. That really varies. Humor is tricky and very subjective. Number 6. Tony Stark and the Wasp. This is a new one from the 2018 Iron Man run actually, and they were really excited about it. This got a very lovingly drawn cover. So Jan and Tony. This is one of those pairings that's like, okay, sure, why not? Most of their stories are about them being busy and having to squeeze in dates, but it's a really smooth relationship, not too much conflict. Not yet. They also have cutesy puns like, don't worry, I won't sting you. Too late, I'm already stung. No man, give me that villain banter. This was during a movie date. It's also normal and nice. For domesticity Felicity lovers, it's great. But still for some fans, it's a bit of an okay, did you just draw names out of a hat and be like who hasn't dated yet? Still, some are just glad she's not with Hank because of that one panel. But there's not only more to that panel, but more to how their relationship soured. Still, if we can retcon away entire universes, why can't we retcon that out? Some things stick no matter how much retcon or reboot scrub you use. Will Tony and Janet last? Probably not. Number 5, Barbara Gordon and Ted Kord. So this occurred during Birds of Prey and was set up as a separate romance for Barbara outside of Dick Grayson. Ted Kord was drawn to Barbara because of her intelligence and attitude, and she enjoyed his easygoing but still serious when needed attitude. The two would enter into a tentative relationship, however ultimately would decide that they would rather be friends / be with other people. This culminated with them leaning in for a kiss and being like, I have something to say, and she says, I'm getting serious about someone else, at the same time as he says, can we just be friends? The two have a good laugh about it and there were no hard feelings. Any lingering potential romantic feelings would be cut short by his murder by Maxwell Lord. And since his resurrection post universe-wide reboots, things have been different. Number 4, Captain America, Falcon, and Lady Thor. Listen, I need to specify, when you have multiples running around at the same time, so you know what I'm talking about. Like some people get really mad when you call Lady Thor, and they're like, she's Thor. And I'm like, yes, but second Thor, and we have adjectives and descriptors for a reason. She's not even Thor anymore. There's just so much happening there. So this happened in all new, all different, and was, well, there was a battle and they're colleagues, and the dialogue after their kiss is really weird. Firstly, everyone is shocked, like they've never seen a kiss before. And then she's all, you certainly taste how I imagined Captain America would taste. And he goes, you taste like a goddess. What do both of those statements mean? Like Squirrel Girl tastes like hazelnuts, that I understand, but what does Captain America taste like? Apple pie? McDonald's? I don't know. And a goddess, so light, energy, and pain? Also, she's not a goddess, maybe more like, you taste like a magic hammer. So yes, this was a thing that happened. They taste how the other expected. Tale as old as time. This ship is called Thunder Shield, by the way. Sounds like a great band, AC/DC all the way. Thunder Shield. Number 3, Scarlet Witch and Brother Voodoo, or Dr. Voodoo. Time for a Scarlet Witch pairing that doesn't involve mind control. Hooray! Scarlet Witch has recently had far more emphasis placed on the witch part of her persona, and was even recently retconned to not being a mutant anymore, which I hope gets changed back. Come on, pendulum retcons, where are you when I need you? Well, Brother Voodoo, Jericho Drum, is a powerful sorcerer, and was even the Sorcerer Supreme for a time. These two decide to explore what the potential future could hold together as a couple for a bit, and it was sweet. They both know the struggles the other has gone through, and the danger and power of magic. It's so wholesome. He asks her if she's okay, there's none of the judgment that comes from other people. She's all like, I've never been with anyone who understands both sides of me. And he's all, after their kiss, that was sudden. Good, but sudden. See, that's something cute after a kiss, not you taste how I thought you would taste. Bleh. Wholesome cuteness. More of this, please. I support. Number 2, Kyle Rayner and Donna Troy. Just before we get started, in the new Teen Titans in the 80s, in that canon, for a time, Donna had a husband and a kid, and then the editors decided that that wasn't relatable for teens, so they had her family die in a car crash, so she could go back to going on dates. Because who can ever relate to having a family? More boys. Where the dates at? Anyways, Kyle was one of the boys for her to go on dates with. There would even later on be kind of a love triangle between her, Kyle, and Jason Todd. But that was the same series that would see her calling Jason Todd retarded. Do you get it? This was during Countdown. So in all honesty, all of that salt aside, this was cute. The two went on dates in space, and balanced the duality of their secret identities and wanting a normal life. I mean, Dawn was down for that. She married a normal guy. So teammates, hopefully more. That's Kyle talking, not me. They'll bring this up on occasion. It depends how much in favor Kyle is, especially post Hal's resurrection. Sometimes it can be like, Kyle? Who? And number 1. So what could top all of this? The Wasp and Deadpool. You're welcome. That's right, so Deadpool's Secret Wars number 4. This showed Janet sleeping with the hot in quotation marks, mustache Deadpool. This was a thing that happened. Well, chop it up to that melded universe, bizarre, weird, timey-wimey stuff going on. Later, there would be some drama about it, and it would come out that while this was going on, the deed, she was calling him Magnus, which is Magneto's name. So in the comics, it's far more common to hear Magneto called Magnus than Eric. So yeah, remember I told you that she hooked up with Magneto Tornado in Secret Wars, and apparently she's been thinking about it since then. Like, dang, it's been decades. Well, poor Deadpool, his feelings were hurt. People are just so awful to him. Go back to Cable, sweetie, it'll be better.
At number 10, we have Cyclops versus Wolverine. In X-Men Schism number 4, a fight breaks out between these two superheroes because of a complex decision on how to face an onslaught of Sentinels unleashed by the world's powers. And as an enormous, seemingly regenerative Sentinel is approaching the two of them, Cyclops insists on allowing the young X-Men to stay and fight, while Wolverine believes it's wrong to put young ones in harm's way. So it's a battle between should we stay and fight or run and regroup. Well, Wolverine gets outranked by Cyclops, but instead of backing down, he goes to their home base and sets 2,000 pounds of explosives to go off at the press of a button to take out the Sentinel and allow for a distraction as they get away. Cyclops is angered by the subordination and decides to take it out on Wolverine as they start to battle it out. And the Sentinel is coming right towards them just to make everything worse. Maybe not the best time to pick an epic fight, guys, but it is a tough call and both arguments make sense to me in different ways. I guess this stuff just sometimes happens.
Coming in at number 10, we've got Wolverine vs. Wolverine from Marvel's Age of Ultron event. Now, as a mutant that's been cloned once, twice, or even several dozen times, Wolverine is certainly no stranger to having to cross claws with a version of himself. However, the time-traveling shenanigans involved in stopping Ultron's complete takeover of Earth has to be one of the most notable. After making the incredibly difficult decision to travel back in time and kill the creator of Ultron, Hank Pym, Wolverine found out that the new Pymless future he'd created was even worse than the one he'd left, and was immediately attacked by this apocalyptic future's version of Wolverine. Then again, considering the entire reason this version of Earth was now destroyed was partially due to a war with the Skrulls, we can maybe understand why the future Wolverine would be a bit suspicious of any newcomers. At number 9, we have our very first clone of the list with the battle between Thor and his cyborg copy, Ragnarok. During the events of Civil War, the real Thor was presumed dead after saving Asgard from destruction. As a means of reinforcing his side of the conflict, Tony Stark wound up using a strand of Thor's hair to create a half-flesh, half-machine clone of the fallen Avenger. A plan that went horribly off the rails when the cloned Thor, dubbed Ragnarok, killed the superhero Goliath and converted many heroes onto Captain America's side. When the real Thor was eventually resurrected, he wasted little time in completely dominating and destroying his copy, proving once and for all who the true God of Thunder is.
Number 9. Batman.
Number 9 is The Thing versus the Hulk. This is a classic showdown that many of you may already be aware of, where Ben Grimm and Bob Banner go at it in the middle of the city streets. Side note, Stan Lee accidentally referred to the Hulk's alter ego as Bob Banner instead of Bruce for a few months before correcting it. Just some trivia for you. Anyway, the reason why they're fighting is basically that the Hulk is going crazy and smashing everything in sight, trying to reach his goal of finding the Avengers to take them down. When the Hulk easily knocks out the Human Torch and holds on to him like a prize at the county fair, the Thing watches by the sidelines wanting to get involved. Then, after Invisible Woman tries to protect the Human Torch with an invisible force screen, she too is rendered unconscious by the Hulk. So the Thing has to take things into his own hands and fight the Hulk himself. The fight goes on for pages and pages, with buildings being knocked down, buses being torn in half. At one point, the Thing drives a boat. It's crazy. Unfortunately, it ends with the crazed Hulk getting the best of Benjamin Grimm, leaving him exhausted both physically and mentally, clambering back to his feet. Alright, at number 8, we've got Superman vs. Shazam. In 1996's Kingdom Come, we witness a fight between these two, initiating at the end of issue 3 and carrying out into issue 4. The reason behind the fight is complicated, but to keep it simple, Shazam has been brainwashed by Lex Luthor, so it's not really him controlling his own actions. But it is a tough thing watching as an aging Superman basically gets beaten up so badly that he almost dies. In this storyline, Superman has the pure intentions of trying to corral a new generation of less than heroic superheroes to help bring peace back to Earth. And with internal resistance on that front, and also these plots by his typical enemies to imprison him, he's really just not ready to defend himself. Not to mention, he's totally caught off guard, and once again, he's older. Luckily, after some serious blows of magical electricity coming from Shazam, Superman is finally able to get through to his alter ego and speak directly to Billy Batson, saving himself, and ultimately a whole lot more from what could have been a game-changing move for Lex Luthor and the others. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of destruction done when Shazam sacrifices himself to detonate an enormous bomb early in the air above the battlefield, saving countless lives. Alright, at number 7, we've got Reed Richards versus Namor. This is a spicy face-off as it's a classic fight of jealousy and competition over a woman's affection. Susan Storm is unconscious in the hospital, and the arrogant and shameless Namor keeps making advances on her right in front of Richard. This escalates to the point where Namor actually makes a move on Susan as she's just barely coming to, and right when Reed enters the room as well. Susan tries to de-escalate the situation, but it's no use due to her injuries and fatigue, so the two heroes go after it. As they rip through the city streets, they throw insults at each other as they tear apart cafes, cars, and the road. It's a pretty fiery battle that Richard seems to know he's at risk of losing due to Namor's sheer strength, but Reed takes the win in the end, exclaiming in a heroic monologue that his anger isn't actually directed at Namor, but at himself for not being a good husband to Susan throughout the years. It's a pretty epic battle with some realistic and possibly relatable motivations, giving it a rightful spot on our list. Coming in at number 6 is Namor again versus Daredevil this time. In this instance, Namor is being arrested as if the human legal system is any match for a superhero, and to represent him, he decides to hire the blind Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. Basically, Namor is angry because he wants a place on land for his people who have only ever lived under the sea. In fact, he actually wants to sue the entire human race for denying them their birthright, as he calls it. Matt, being the pragmatic lawyer that he is, simply acknowledges that there's just no legal precedent for suing the whole human race. This obvious and very astute point throws Namor the Submariner into a rage that he takes to the streets without using the door. And in this moment is actually when Daredevil first wears the red suit that we all know, and it's in preparation for his fight with Namor, where Daredevil is off to protect humanity from an outraged underwater superhero. So this fight between two superheroes is heated by an external issue that forces them to clash. In so many words, Daredevil's sense of duty is clashing against Namor's rage. They take the fight directly to the streets, busting down lampposts, crumbling brick walls, and even taking over a wrecking ball at one point. The fight ends with Namor winning, naturally, claiming that Daredevil had been the most courageous of all his foes, at least, despite having faced off against the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. And that's a pretty good accolade for Daredevil if I've got to say anything about it.
Number 5, Scarlet Witch. This was a weird romance that involved Scarlet Witch kind of forgetting who she really was in order to fall for Victor. The two fell in love fast, though under false pretenses. And although at first we thought Dr. Doom was just trying to manipulate Wanda, he later insisted this was not the case and that he really loved her. And just as we thought maybe this could actually work out in some weird way, Doom then lashed out, seemingly implying he never loved Wanda, and in fact he thought she was weak and he had been using and manipulating her the whole time. Although it's more likely that Doom was actually just lashing out because he felt some shame, maybe he had a broken heart. He mistreated Wanda harshly, even when she still tried to help him despite his betrayal, and insisting that she was weak and that he had only been using her weakness against her to get her power. Needless to say, that was pretty much the end of their relationship. That great revelation, and the bizarre revelation where Doom claimed that apparently every bad thing Wanda has ever done was actually not of her own doing, but was caused by Doom himself. Wait, what? Number 4, Mary Jane Watson. Again. Another weird Spidey pairing with Mary Jane also comes to us from The Ultimates, because Spider-Man's clones all had his memories. They were just all basically into MJ. And not just Jessica. All the clones were meant to have their memories wiped so that they could develop their own identities and also be used in the process, but they escaped the facility where they were kept before this could happen. As a result, Kane, who also here sports an even creepier version of his half-melted face, ends up trapping Mary Jane and kidnapping her, claiming it's all out of love for her. Oh, if someone does that to you, you just need to get out of there. Seriously. Which is what MJ tries to do. She's like, no, let me out! Initially, she thinks that he's Peter from a silhouette, but then when she sees his face, she's horrified and knows something is definitely wrong, and this probably isn't her Peter Parker. Of course, she is right. Kane, out of love for MJ, wants to protect her by making her stronger. To do this, he exposes her to the Oz formula, which ends up turning her into a big red monster temporarily. Bet you thought I was going to say a big red dog, but no, that's Clifford. Fortunately, the real Peter Parker shows up and is able to use his presence to calm MJ down, transforming her back into a normal teenage girl. Well, normal. I mean, I feel like she just went through some stuff and she might transform again, but sort of normal. Mostly normal. Number 3. Eddie Brock and Ashley Kafka. This one comes to us not from the comics, but instead from the Spider-Man animated series out of the 90s. Here, Dr. Ashley Kafka was the person treating Eddie Brock during his time at Ravencroft Institute for the Criminally Insane. Eddie insisted that he was Venom, but Dr. Kafka believed that he was just delusional, and that stress had basically caused him to lash out, and to believe that he was the villain Venom, when he actually wasn't. This relationship was weird on the premise that it was a patient and doctor relationship turned romance, and the fact that both fell in love with one another while Ashley kind of thought Eddie was imagining being Venom and was at the time insane. So yeah. It got even weirder when Carnage got involved and caused a bunch of chaos that caused Eddie to save the day once reunited with the Venom symbiote. In the end, they were unable to be together as Venom got sucked into a magical portal in order to save Ashley. Don't you just hate it when a magical portal and multiple villains prevent you from being with the one you love? I know I do. Number 2. Mia Flores. One of the most random when it comes to Peter's interactions with women. Mia Flores kissed Peter while he was out with Carly Cooper, Harry Osborn, and Lily Hollister. Like, she just randomly grabbed him and then kissed him. She didn't even introduce herself first. She was just like, I'm gonna kiss you. I'm like, oh my goodness. Peter did not sign up for that. This was all part of a ploy for Mia to basically get in with Harry's entourage, wanting to get closer to him. But the weird part of the whole interaction was just how stalkery Mia was acting during this whole thing. It was like she was out to kill. She was like, Peter, I'm coming for you in this club. And Peter, rather than just confront Mia and be like, I'm really not into you and no thank you, decided to of course jump out a window instead. Because that's how Peter Parker likes to solve problems sometimes. This was less of a relationship and more a weird attempt at a romantic and sexy moment from Mia, but it's just really awkward and strange, and I felt it was so weird that I needed to include it, even though it's not a full relationship. Technically. Number 1. Jessica Carradine. Remember that time Ben Reilly pined after the daughter of the man who murdered Uncle Ben? No? Well, take a seat, cause yeah, that happened. Jessica Carradine is the daughter of Dennis Carradine, the name that would later be given to the man who killed Peter Parker's Uncle Ben. She grew up with a hatred of Spider-Man, believing that the hero was actually to blame for the death of both Ben and her father. She believed that her dad was basically framed by Spidey. Needless to say, she and Ben's relationship is catastrophically ruined when she realizes that he is Spider-Man. I don't even know why Ben would go for this if he was aware of Jessica's name and her ties to the man who murdered Uncle Ben, but hey, I guess it wasn't technically his uncle since he's just Peter's clone. One of Peter's clones. It should be noted that Jessica did eventually come to terms with the fact that her father was actually the guilty party, but she still couldn't be with Ben because she was then just too worried for his safety, since he often puts himself in various dangerous situations as Spidey.
Coming in at number 8, we've got another Avenger fighting a less than worthy variant with Captain America versus Hydra Cap. After an alternate Steve Rogers that had grown up as a devout follower of Hydra wound up taking over the entire United States in a particularly controversial Marvel storyline, the world was overjoyed to see the real Steve Rogers return and finally put this imposter in his place. Literally bursting forth out of a shard of the cosmic cube, the true Steve Rogers was able to fight back against this twisted version of everything he stood for and eventually break his armor down with a little help from the worthiness deciding Mjolnir. At number 7, we've got to go with the classic storyline of Hulk versus the Maestro. Bruce Banner often has to face off against different mental versions of the Hulk inside his head, but this alternate version of himself from a post-apocalyptic future is the real deal. Naming himself Maestro after conquering what remains of America following a nuclear winter, this version of the Hulk has become far stronger than the Hulk's usual starting strength, with years of sucking up deadly radiation only improving his ferocity and power. When the real Hulk encountered this warlord version of himself, the only way he was able to finally come out on top was by literally warping the Maestro back in time to be killed by the same gamma bomb that created the Hulk back in the 60s. I'd say that's a little bit of overkill though. Coming in at number 6, we have the Battle of the Batmen with Tim Drake versus Jason Todd. Now, the many Robins of the DC universe are no strangers to occasionally squabbling amongst themselves, but when both Tim Drake and Jason Todd are dressed as Batman and beating the hell out of each other in the middle of the Batcave, well, that's just dramatic enough to earn a spot on this list. During a period of time in which Bruce Wayne is believed to have been killed by Darkseid, Jason Todd had taken over the cowl and cape and become a much deadlier Dark Knight. Not wanting Bruce's no-killing rule to be abandoned, the Bat family tried many ways to get Jason to stand down, before finally culminating in a Batman vs. Batman battle that shook the Bat family to its core.
Number 5. Venom and Lee Price. Lee Price really messed up Venom. Their relationship was weird in the worst of ways. Venom bonded to Lee when it was desperate for a host, but Lee ended up taking control of the symbiote and using it to do all kinds of terrible things and kill people. Not that the symbiote hadn't killed people before, I mean it had, but the huge difference here was this was very much against Venom's will, and Price would often use it to target people regardless of their alignment, which Venom has always been conflicted about, while with Eddie it was against hurting innocents for the most part. But Lee didn't care about what Venom wanted or its feelings. Basically, this relationship between Price and Venom, while not inherently romantic explicitly, was meant to symbolize the most toxic kind of romantic relationship. An abusive one. Number 4. SheHulk. Okay, I couldn't put this one in the top spot because it wasn't real. Just one of Doom's many ploys to trick others into helping him in a plot to destroy his arch nemesis, the team known as the Fantastic Four. Here, Dr. Doom pretended to marry SheHulk and pretended that he had wiped her memories of the Silver Surfer, when the Surfer ultimately found out after crash landing in Latveria and seeing posters celebrating the reign of their new queen, Doom's new bride, who in reality was not the real SheHulk, but an imposter created to resemble Silver Surfer's aka Norrin Radd's long lost love. There are so many questions I have in regards to how Dr. Doom was able to pull this plan off, but hey, it's a comic and it's Dr. Doom, so I'm just willing to let any queries go unanswered here and just accept that this worked. Even with this not being the real deal SheHulk, the fact that Dr. Doom created this whole ploy and relationship just to destroy the Fantastic Four is pretty bizarre and intense, and it's also part of the reason why I think so many of us fans love him. Number 3. Louise Kennedy. The story of Louise Kennedy comes with a pretty powerful moral. Never date Kane Parker. Louise was a cop in Salt Lake City who had turned dirty and was on the criminal drug lord Vincent Tannen's payroll. She and Kane shared a night of passion, and both had feelings for the other. Both became this light in the darkness for one another, this hope that they could be redeemed or saved or become better. After Kane found out about Louise's betrayal, however, he ended up being forced to confront her and eventually killed her as a result. After snapping her neck, he left his mark on her, burning her face with the mark of Kane, shocking Ben Reilly, who was actually there to witness all of this, and whom he'd actually saved in killing Louise. It's a very terrible end to a relationship. Let me just burn your face after you're already dead. Number 2. Sandy Bidwell. Who is Sandy Bidwell? Well, she is a woman that Doom very well severely messed up when he was in college. Doom tells us about what happened with Sandy, although he himself doesn't recall her name, in Ed Brubaker's Books of Doom. He remembers being inebriated and an attractive woman coming on to him as he bragged about Latveria and his promising future while on campus. She kissed him, pushing him up against a tree, but when he looked into her eyes, he didn't like the emptiness that he saw in them, which ignited something in him, a fury, and anger, and he started to strangle her, a secretary at Empire State University where Peter was a student. She pined after Peter, and although at times it seemed like Peter didn't even notice her existence, the two started dating. Needless to say, they didn't make for a great partnership due to the fact that Peter kept having to bail on their dates to attend to heroic business as Spider-Man, but didn't really want to confide in Deborah, so he just gave her a ton of really lame excuses. Eventually, the two broke up, but Deborah remained obsessed with him and began to fantasize and hallucinate that he was Spider-Man, in essence making the ultimate excuse for his behavior while also idolizing him. When her therapist approached Peter after learning of this and asked him to wear a Spider-Man suit to help shock her out of her fantasy, he refused to do so, which obviously the therapist was like, well, that's weird, but okay. Deborah, becoming delusional, later ended up in a toxic relationship as a result of all of this, making excuses for her then husband. Fortunately, Peter did eventually confess to her that he was Spider-Man, which helped Deborah to move forward and woke her to the truth of her current relationship, motivating her to get a divorce. Thank goodness. Still pretty crazy. Number 4. Venom and Beck Underwood. This one was pretty weird because Beck seemed to be super into it at first. Well, I mean, for a time anyways. Like most people, she ended up ultimately being turned off by the whole combo deal of Venom and Eddie Brock together. In the end, the whole dating of both the symbiote and Eddie ended up just being too much for her. It got pretty strange too when Beck asked Eddie about his relationship with the suit and wanted to make sure it was healthy. One of the things that I actually didn't really like about her was how she got kind of a bit judgy when she felt the need to seek clarity on if Eddie was really enamored with Venom because he just hadn't found an adequate and committed woman to settle down with. Let Eddie love his alien suit, I say. Just let it happen. But I totally understand that it can be a lot for someone to get involved with both Eddie Brock and, you know, the alien that is Venom. That's a lot. In the end, the two ended up parting on amicable terms, with Beck giving both Eddie and Venom one last kiss and hug. And Venom was also super heartbroken about it. They were like, no, please don't leave us. Number 3. Amara Pereira. Amara Pereira was a brilliant doctor who ended up discovering a cure for the mutant gene, but one that she dared not produce, knowing what kind of unrest and political and sociological warfare it would likely create. She dated Tony Stark briefly before he faked his own death. When he returned, she was no longer interested, feeling he had betrayed her by letting her think he was dead when he was not, which I mean, fair enough. She then ended up becoming a reluctant ally, confidant, friend, and implied lover to Dr. Doom during the events of the infamous Iron Man series, where Victor Von Doom took up the mantle of Iron Man during Tony's absence. At the end of that series, it was revealed that Amara was pregnant, although it was later briefly mentioned by Dr. Doom that their unborn child did not make it to term and thus was never born. I love when other writers do that. They just come in and they're like, this never happened, it's fine, don't worry about it. While this relationship actually felt pretty authentic, it was definitely still odd and random, but it also happened at a pretty strange and unique time in Victor's life, so yeah, I guess okay. Number 2. Eddie Brock and Anne Wang. And Venom? This relationship basically got super weird in a bad way for Anne when Venom got involved. Anne and Eddie were originally married, but after Eddie lost his dad and his job, Anne couldn't take sort of the dark path that he was headed down and left him. This of course only put Eddie in an even darker place, and then he found the Venom symbiote. Together, their combined hatred for Spider-Man turned them into a villain, but Eddie still longed for Anne and wanted to make things right. They kind of ended up back together for a bit, but this also made things worse for Anne, who was left traumatized and feeling violated after bonding with Venom herself. She didn't like the person that she and the symbiote were together, she-Venom, nor what it did to Eddie. And it was all this trauma that actually caused Anne to be unable to leave her apartment for months, and later resulted in her taking her own life after Eddie and Venom confronted her once more and were super clueless when it came to just how fragile Anne's emotional and mental state was at the time. Because Spider-Man was also present at the time and also freaking Anne out though, Eddie of course continued to blame him for his problems and for the death of his ex-wife. Number 1. Symbrock. This is really the love story for the ages, but is also one of the strangest ones out there. Eddie falling in love with a symbiotic alien suit who it turns out is its own living entity, and vice versa. This is confirmed in the comics as the two have expressed their love for one another and even at times bickered like a married couple. They also call each other things like love and dear, so Yeah, that's pretty coupley in my opinion. Not only that, but Eddie has helped Venom deliver children, even though those children are technically kinda just Venom's who reproduces asexually. But still, Venom considered Eddie to basically be the father of their children, so yeah. And also, Eddie helped the symbiote to deliver, in essence, their symbiote child together, Sleeper, bonding with Venom while it was in essence giving birth. This labor was a hard one, and Eddie bonded with Venom to help it through and to help stabilize his partner, not just in this labor, but also in heroics, crime, and in a way, love. Aside from this moment, we have seen tons of other moments where the pair chose to be together and support one another in a pretty intimate way. At the end of the day, these two together are one of the weirdest and sweetest romances on this list.